Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku's Class Sunshine mask slipped? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Thus, quoted memories. He was fine. Everything was fine. He had to be fine. It's what everyone expected of him, after all. But he wasn't fine. He wasn't the Class Sunshine, he wasn't happy or even okay, and he most certainly was not Deku like you can do it. No, Izuku Midoriya was a broken shell of a boy, just your normal useless, worthless Deku. Not that anyone ever noticed. That's why he's here, smiling faintly as he looks at the Christmas decorations in the park. He is thankful that no one is around making him hide his true feelings. Hide his intentions for tonight. Because tonight, while everyone rings in the new year with their loved ones, he will give them the greatest gift he can. The gift of not being bothered, of silence, and of him no longer being a burden on everyone. His classmates, they will get to soar without him holding them back. They won't have the target on their back because of him. No, he's giving them the chance to succeed in ways they wouldn't otherwise. Because all he has ever done was take away precious time, resources, and space. Izuku stopped walking in front of a dark alley and turned to look at Yue in the distance. He had chosen this spot for a reason. He knew that the cameras from the school couldn't pick him up from here. But he also knew it gave the best view for him so he could see the place that has been most like a home to him. Giving a soft smile, Izuku gave a slight wave to the building. Thank you for giving me a chance, for letting me dream a little bit longer. I apologize for wasting so much of the teacher's time and for being so selfish. Most importantly, thank you for giving me a glimpse at a world that is so different from my own. Turning back to the alley, Izuku walked down to the end, where a wall cut off his path. Izuku let himself fall into the pile of trash bags that lined one side of the alley, a small laugh escaping him at the irony. Not quite gutter trash, but still where I belong. After moving around to get as comfortable as possible, Izuku reaches into his backpack and pulls out a utility knife. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he presses the blade to his wrist, finally letting go of the memories haunting him. Deku means someone who can't do anything. A thin horizontal gash appears going from one side of Izuku's wrist to the other. He pauses for a moment, watching the blood start to pool at the top of the cut before running over the edges of his arm. A genuine smile spread across his face. I did it. Moving the blade up a little bit, he continues what he set out to do. There's no hope for him. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry. Without power, can one become a hero? No, I should think not. It's not wrong to dream, however, you need to be realistic. Ill-suited vessel. You should know your place, useless Deku. Beneath my feet. Completely irrational when you consider someone like you got in. Inconvenience to those around you. You're nothing but a liability. Worthless, quirkless wonder. You want to be a hero so bad? If you think you'll have a quirk in your next life, go take a swan dive off the roof. Cut. Izuku moves the blade up his arm till each forearm has half a dozen gashes. Letting the blade slip from his fingers, Izuku leans his head back to look up at the sky. Well, Kaken, it's not a roof, but it'll work. His smile never fades as he closes his eyes, at peace for the first time in a long time. Eraserhead, also known as Shoyuta Aizawa, enjoys his patrols. He enjoys swinging from rooftop to rooftop using his capture weapon. He enjoys taking down the bad guys and likes saving people just because they need it. He enjoys the freedom and the calm that being out in the night air never fails to bring him. Not that he would ever admit that to anyone. Tonight's patrol had been a good one. There had been no significant villains. He had got to fight a couple of muggers, deal with some drunks, and help people that truly needed help. The whole reason that he decided to become a hero. All in all, it was a good night. Nothing too significant, but enough excitement that he didn't have a dull patrol. Nearing the end of his shift, Shoyuta found himself perching on a roof ledge, just listening. There was a noise that he kept hearing. The sound of something being shifted, and there it was again. It could just be an animal, but his instincts still tell him to go check it out, even if that is the case. He's not about to ignore them. They've saved his life too many times. Tossing his capture weapon out to swing to another roof, he hears the sound again, followed by a broken voice slurring their words together. Well, Kaken, it's not a roof, but it'll work. And doesn't that just make his heart shatter? Because of the implications of that and that name, they make his stomach revolt. Even as he drops down into the alleyway from which the voice came. Surveying his surroundings, Shoyuta immediately notes that short, labored breaths are coming from somewhere in front of him. Other than that, no one else is in the alley with them. Taking that for what it is, Shoyuta walks towards the breathing, eyes narrowing as he sees the diminutive form of a child lying among the bags of trash. As he approaches the prone figure, he pulls out his flashlight. He shines it at the wall near the kid, allowing the space to be illuminated while not having to worry about accidentally blinding the kid. Now that there is enough light to see the child, it confirms his suspicions from hearing those broken words. There lying among the trash, looking so incredibly small, is Izuku Midoriya, his problem child. At first glance, the half a dozen cuts going up each of his forearms are the worst part of his appearance. Not wasting any more time, Shoyuta quickly grabs the gauze and some medical tape out of his utility belt. That done, he sets about wrapping the kid's wrists to try and slow the bleeding. Kid? Hey kid, can you hear me? No response. Even as he gently shakes him. Midoriya. Refusing to let himself panic at the lack of a response, Shoyuta checks the boy's pulse. He allows a sharp, almost relieved exhale to escape him because as weak as the pulse may be, it's still there. His problem child is still alive. Taking in the rest of the greenette's appearance, Shoyuta quickly checks for any other wounds. Then using one end of his capture weapon to wrap around the boy's frame, he secures his limbs to his body in case he goes into shock. Preventative measures complete, Shoyuta pulls out his phone and shares his location with emergency services. Before promptly inputting the code requesting an ambulance and his hero ID number for confirmation. That done, he resumes monitoring Midoriya's pulse and breathing. Keeping one hand on the problem child, he lifts his phone back up and calls the one person he knows that can support him through this. Hey Sho. Happy New Year. All done with patrol. Zashi, stop. Please. I know it's a lot to ask, but can you meet me at Muzutafu General Hospital? What's going on? Are you hurt? The sound of keys jingling in the background of their conversation brings a small measure of relief to Shoyuta. I'm leaving now. I'll let Toshi and Nem know on the way. Hizashi. Breathe. I'm uninjured. But, good. How did I miss this? How did this even happen? Did I really miss all the signs? He can feel himself spiraling, but he can't help it. This isn't some stranger that he has to help through this. No, this is someone he knows, someone he sees almost every day. One of his students. One of his kids. Sho, Panther. What's going on? Midoriya. I found him on my patrol. In an alley, among bags of trash. Zashi, I think he did this to himself. His forearms, the cuts are deep. He hasn't woken up at all since I've been here. How did I miss this? The sound of sirens cuts through his spiraling thoughts, and without another word, he hangs up his phone. He knows his husband will understand, even if he won't exactly like it. I'm sorry, sir, but I need you to step back. Shoyuta looks up at the female paramedic as he hesitantly moves away from his problem child. Taking the opportunity, Shoyuta grabs the backpack lying near the kid. His heart rate has been weak but steady, and breathing has been labored. There weren't any other signs of attack, so it's looking like an attempted suicide. He freezes momentarily, the word bitter on his tongue. A harsh reminder that he failed this kid. The woman doesn't bother to look up, instead focusing on helping her partner by applying the tourniquet to the kid's arms just above the elbow. I assume you want to ride with Eraserhead? Yeah. Looking over at her partner, the woman nods as they get Izuku loaded onto the gurney and strap him down. Seeing that he's strapped in and not a danger to himself should he go into shock, Shota unwraps his capture weapon from around the boy. Once done, the paramedics rush down the alley and quickly load Izuku into the back of the ambulance. Shoyuta following not far behind them. Getting in the back, He watches as one of the paramedics shuts the door from the outside. Inside the ambulance, things were becoming strained. The woman was thankfully busy getting into Izuku to give him fluids while also monitoring his vitals. However, that left Shoyuta alone to his thoughts, and all he could think about was how small and pale the kid looked. "How far are we?" Shoyuta demanded after a few terse moments. "We aren't far and should be arriving in just a few moments. Upon arrival, he'll be taken back immediately. They've been alerted and are just waiting for us." The woman gives him an understanding smile before turning back to the monitors. Thus, arriving at the hospital, Izuku is immediately rushed back into the emergency room by some nurses and orderlies, leaving Shoyuta alone in the entryway. "Sir?" Shoyuta looks away from the double doors that his student disappeared behind and to the person speaking. He doesn't bother with a verbal response, knowing that if he waits, they will eventually continue talking. "We need you to fill out some forms while you wait. Would you like me to direct you to the waiting room?" Giving a non-committal shrug, Shoyuta follows the nurse to the waiting area. Taking the papers offered to him, he all but collapses into one of the chairs as the events of the evening start to take their toll. Looking down at the stack of admittance papers, he runs a hand down his face in disdain. After a short battle where he tries to will the documents to completion to no avail, he ends up sighing in defeat as he lets himself get distracted by the work in front of him. He doesn't know how long he's been sitting there filling out the paperwork before a to-go cup is held just above the papers, directly in his line of sight. Pausing in his writing, Shoyuta notes that it's been long enough for his hand to cramp up, and he has to flex his fingers a moment. As he reaches for the cup, he allows his eyes to follow the other arm until tired onyx eyes meet worried chartreuse. "Thought you could use a pick-me-up." Shoyuta doesn't bother to hide the small smile that appears from his husband. It has already been a long night, and it's starting to look like there will be no end in sight. That means they can both use any little bit of happiness they can find to get through this. "Thanks for this, Zashi," and even though he lifts the coffee cup, he knows his partner understands what he means. That he's thanking him for dropping everything just to come and support him as he waits. Hizashi shoots Shoyuta a fond grin before snatching the papers out of his lap. "How many more do we need to do?" Taking a drink of his coffee before replying, Shoyuta sighs, "Just need to finish up the top one there." Hizashi looks down at the top paper, scanning it before he finishes filling it out, making sure to adjust his handwriting for it to look like shoulda scrawl. "I'm going to go turn these in. You take a few to relax, then you can talk to me when I get back." As he walks past where Shoyuta is sitting, he purposely bumps his husband's shoulder with a fist before continuing on his way down the hall. Walking up to the intake desk, Hizashi hands the forms to the nurse while flashing his most disarming smile. "Has there been any update on Izuku Midoriya?" The nurse turns a brilliant shade of red before turning to face the computer screen while stammering, "Sorry, sir. He's still in surgery." Hizashi's smile turns into a sly grin at the stammering, "All right, thank you." Turning on his heel, he walks down the hall to where he knows Shoyuta is waiting. When he is sure he is out of hearing range, he laughs at the interaction. "What did you do?" Hizashi looks over at his tired husband while letting a cheeky grin spread across his face. "Me? All I did was return the forms." "I don't believe you for a minute, Hizashi." Snickering, Hizashi places a hand on his chest, feigning an injury. "Really, Sho? I'm hurt." But in all seriousness, all I did was flash the nurse a smile and try to get information on the green bean. By the way, he's still in surgery. Shoyuta pinches the bridge of his nose, not bothering to look up at his husband. "You're as bad as my class." "Hey now. That's just rude." Hizashi squawks indignantly while moving closer and taking a seat beside the other man. "Feeling a bit better, grumpy cat?" Shoyuta leans forward, placing his face in his hands. "Not really, but thanks, Songbird. This whole thing is so messed up. If you had seen him. He's so small. Why would he do this? He's just a kid. I don't understand any of this." His voice softens as he starts to break. How did I fail this badly?" Leaning forward onto clasped hands, Hizashi moves his leg to bump against Shuta's in a discreet form of support. "You didn't fail, Sho. You found him when he needed you most. As for the why, well, that's something we'll hopefully be able to find out. Now, why don't you get some rest? I'll wake you when a nurse or doctor comes. Shoyuta looks at Hizashi, and as much as he wants to argue that he doesn't need to rest, his eyes are burning. Leaning back in his chair again, he closes his eyes to try and take the blonde's advice. Hizashi watches Shoyuta for a few to make sure he's actually going to do as he suggested before pulling out his phone to respond to work emails. All they could do now was wait. He hated waiting. Soon an hour had gone by, then another hour came and went without them hearing anything. Hizashi shifted quietly in his seat impatiently. No news is good news. They haven't come to tell us anything, so he's still holding on. He's still fighting. Another hour came and went. The only good thing about this wait is that I am getting some work done, and Shoyuta is catching up on some sleep. Hizashi sighed as he stared up at the ceiling. Just before the 4-hour mark, a doctor walks up to them. "Excuse me? Are you here for Midoriya?" Hizashi nearly jumps out of his chair at the voice. Glancing around, his eyes settled on the doctor. "One moment, I'm sorry." He turns his attention to Shoyuta and lightly shakes his shoulder. "Eraser, the doctor's here." Shoyuta is immediately up on his feet, staring at the doctor. "How is he?" The doctor shakes his head, taking a step back out of instinct from the other men's reactions. "Are you both his guardians?" "Acting guardians, he attends UA. I'm his homeroom teacher and the hero that found him." Shoyuta crosses his arms over his chest while staring at the doctor in front of him. "He's stable, but I have to stress this. He is by no means out of the woods. He's lost a lot of blood, and his oxygen count was incredibly low. He's in a coma, and until he wakes up, we won't be able to tell if there will be any lasting effects." "I'm sorry." "See, can we see him?" Hizashi slightly bounces from one foot to the other, torn because he's glad that the kid is stable, fighting, but also hurting because he just wants the green bean to be okay now. He's in recovery now. I don't think it's a good time for visitors. As I said, he lost a lot of blood, and since he's in a fragile state, we don't want to risk any infections. Barring any issues throughout the night, he should be placed in a room tomorrow, and you should be able to visit him then. Letting out a small huff, Shoyuta narrows his eyes slightly. "You'll call us if anything changes?" The doctor nods. "Yes, of course, but that being said, we were unable to get through to his mother. It seems any attempt we made the number rang as having been disconnected." Shoyuta glances over at Hizashi, a deep frown settling on his face. "I'll be sure to look into it, thank you." He doesn't wait for a response as he turns away and starts heading down the hall. "Come on, Bird, we need to let Nedsu know what's going on." Hizashi nods to the doctor with a smile. "Thank you, we'll be back tomorrow." He then hurries to catch up to Shoyuta. "You all right?" Shoyuta turns his head slightly to glance at the blonde. "No, but he's still fighting." He looks down at the yellow backpack, letting a small sigh escape. He's still fighting. Hitoshi sat at the dining room table, watching Shoyuta enter the kitchen in a daze. Turning his attention to the small silver-haired child beside him, he gave her a gentle nudge to get her attention. Eri blinked red eyes at Hitoshi as she set her crayon down. "Yeah, Toshi?" Her brow furrows in confusion as he points to where their dad is in the kitchen. Getting up, she takes a few hesitant steps towards the kitchen before calling out softly, "Dad hurt?" Shoyuta slowly blinks at his kids before moving forward to kneel in front of Eri. "No, kiddo, I'm not hurt." Eri shakes her head with a faint smile as she pokes Shoyuta in the chest. "Today hurts." "What?" Eri fidgets slightly. "Some days hurt. You wake up and feel like everything good is a dream. Today hurts." Shoyuta turns to Hitoshi, a single brow raised in question. His lips twitch down into a slight frown at the shrug he receives as a response from the boy. Turning back to Eri, he presses his forehead to hers. "Yeah, kid, today hurts." Eri chews on her bottom lip for a moment before opening her arms in a silent offer of a hug. "Do you want to talk about it? Or I can share my colors and paper so you can write it down." Deku says that sometimes writing it down is easier. Shoyuta leans into Eri, wrapping his arms around his little girl, holding her close. He hates how he can feel his heart breaking all over again. "Eri, Do you have days that hurt? Eri wraps her arms around Shoyuta, tucking her chin into his shoulder with a soft hum. Yeah, but it's okay. I talk to Deku because he's like me. His quirk hurts him a lot too. Shoyuta can't help it, knowing that his daughter and the boy in the hospital seem to understand each other due to pain. It tears a sob from his throat as he pulls Eri closer. His grip tightened, desperate to keep her where he could keep her safe. Hitoshi pushes his chair back from the table as he hears his dad's sob, all but sprinting down the hall to the bathroom and banging on the door. Pups. He's crying. Hizashi opens the door, hair only half-dried. He pauses briefly to give Hitoshi a hug before hurrying down the hall to the dining room. His heart dropped at the scene in the archway where the dining room and kitchen meet. Eri looks up at Hizashi, her eyes blown wide with a mix of fear and worry as her small hands rub slow circles on Shuta's back. Sho. Hizashi walks over to where they both are and kneels down. Come on, Sho, let's go sit on the couch, okay? We can grab a cat and snuggle. He gently pries his arms away from Eri, his smile soft and gentle as he helps Shoyuta stand up. Good job, Panther. How about we get you something to drink before we go to the living room? Sorry. Shoyuta gives a slight nod as he turns away from his family, clearly upset with himself, and heads to get a cup of coffee. Hizashi smiles reassuringly to his kids before motioning them to the living room. Eri reaches a hand out to Hitoshi while chewing on her bottom lip nervously. Papa, is Dad going to be alright? Yes, baby bear, Sho is going to be alright. He just needs a moment to himself to be able to calm down. Hitoshi looks around the room, searching for his cat, his eyes narrowing as they zone in on the yellow backpack on the ground by the front door. After a moment, he turns to look at Hizashi questioningly. Shoyuta, however, chooses that moment to walk into the living room, where he promptly takes a seat on one of the couches with a groan. I emailed Nedzu while waiting for the coffee to be ready. Dad, Pops? What's going on? Shoyuta looks at Hitoshi as he runs a hand through his hair. There was an incident on patrol last night that is being dealt with. Turning to Eri, his gaze softens ever so slightly. Eri, do you know if Deku wrote about his bad days? Eri nods. He said it was easier than talking sometimes. But if I ever ended up writing about my bad days, I needed to show you, Papa or Toshi. Hizashi moves to sit on the coffee in front of Eri. He takes one of her hands into his own, soothingly rubbing the back of her hand with his thumb. Baby bear, do you know anything about what he wrote? No, but I know he always had the notebook with him. What's going on, Papa? Is Deku alright? Hizashi smiles sadly as he leans forward to place a kiss on his kiddo's forehead. No, baby bear, he's not, but he's fighting, so we need to try to help him, alright? Eri nods while squeezing Hizashi's hand. Shoyuta huffs as he gets back up and walks over to the yellow bag. Reaching in, he snorts as he pulls out one of his cats. Dirtbag, this doesn't belong to you. After setting the cat on the floor, he goes about emptying the backpack. He's surprised when he finds the two Yudata uniforms neatly folded in the bag, along with another set of clothes, all carefully packed to take up the least amount of space. There are also a few jelly pouches and protein bars, among other small snacks. There are small travel sizes of personal hygiene items placed inside a plastic bag, a small All Might plushie, and 3 notebooks, each with a pencil shoved in it, bookmarking the last page he was on. Placing everything but the notebooks back into the back, Shoyuta can't help but hate the picture that this is painting. It was eerily similar to when they first brought Hitoshi home. His backpack had been meticulously packed as well. Pausing in his packing, he looks from the bag over to Hitoshi, concern softening his features just a bit. Hitoshi, are you doing all right? Nodding, Hitoshi continues to watch as his dad repacks the yellow monstrosity with the utmost care. Dad, is Midoriya in the system? Hizashi moves so he can wrap his arms around Hitoshi. We don't know, kitten, but we're going to find out. I promise. Hitoshi looks up at Hizashi and then back over to the backpack, a hand moving to the back of his neck to nervously rub at it. If he is, you will make sure he's safe, right? Of course we will. You don't have to worry about that. Hizashi flashes his son a bright grin. Shoyuta nods his agreement before looking down at the 3 titled notebooks in his hands. Hero Analysis number 13, Villain Analysis number 5, and Analysis of Me No. Taking the notebooks with him, he walks back to the couch to sit back down. Eri, Hitoshi, if you want, you can go play video games, or if you want the living room, Shoyuta and I can go into our room. Hizashi watches how Shuta's eyes narrow just the slightest bit like they do whenever he's determined to figure out a tough case. Pops, no offense, but I'm staying. I'm training to be a hero, and if something happened to make Dad this upset, then I'd rather be here to help. Yeah, Papa. Dad's upset, and Deku needs help. They saved me, Papa. I want to be their hero too. Eri pulls her hand from Hizashi's and stands up as she makes her declaration. Her red eyes sparkled in her determination. Hizashi shares a look with Shoyuta, a proud smile on his face. All right, then, we'll do this as a family. What do you say, Sho? Shoyuta looks from Hizashi to their kids, letting out a small scoff. Arguing would be illogical. That being said, it doesn't stop him from tilting his head just slightly so that his hair falls to hide his face and, consequently, the small amount of pink dusting his cheeks from embarrassment. Journal entry. Thus, Shoyuta looks around the living room to make sure his family is ready. Hands gripping the notebook titled, Analysis of Me Number 3. Eri quietly moves back to her spot on the couch while grabbing the blanket off the back and covering herself up with it. Okay, all ready. Shoyuta opens the notebook, flipping through the pages, he starts to read out loud. Dear Journal, today was simultaneously the best and worst day of my life. The teacher told the rest of the class how I still want to attend UA. That got about as great of a reaction as expected. Everyone was laughing, telling me how pathetic I am and that I'd never make it into UCAC, and even went so far as to blow up another one of my notebooks. Though this time, it was one of my hero analysis ones. He was so mad. He told me to take a swan dive off the roof. I thought about it. I really did. I'm just so tired of being used as a punching bag, for quirk training, for anything the other students want to try, and the teachers not caring or joining in. Just encouraging them. I'm tired of the spider lilies on my desk, all for something I can't control. That's how many spider lilies have been on my desk. That equals out to 2 a week. That's just from middle school. The only reason I didn't jump was due to how angry I was. How could Kaken be so careless? What if I had actually done it? He can't just go around saying things like that. Stupid. I'm sorry, what? Bakugo said what? Hizashi looks at Shoyuta only to find a red-eyed glare directed his way. Hizashi gives a sheepish grin before signing, sorry, and gestures for Shoyuta to continue. Shoyuta huffs as he turns his attention back to the page and continues to read from where he left off. Anyways, while walking home, I got attacked by a sludge villain. He forced himself down my throat and I was suffocating. It hurt so much that I could feel my lungs burning as he talked to me. He told me it would only take about 45 seconds, then it would all be over. But All Might showed up and he saved me. How cool is that? He even gave me an autograph without me asking. But then I did something stupid. I don't remember what led me to do it. Maybe I was still suffering from the lack of oxygen. I'm not entirely sure, but I grabbed hold of All Might's leg as he jumped. Then he was stupid. He told me to let go while we were in the air, so I had to remind him that it was dangerous at that point for me to let go. First the sludge monster and then All Might tried to kick him off in midair? Why was All Might so mean to him? Eri hugs the blanket tighter to her, clearly not liking how her hero was treated. When we landed on a rooftop, I asked All Might if someone without a quirk could be a hero. All Might, he turned into this shriveled up, sickly man. He told me about a battle he had 5 years ago and showed me the injury he has on his side. After all that, he answered me. He told me, without power, can one become a hero? No, I should think not. That, it's not wrong to dream, however, you need to be realistic. Then he left me alone on that DMN roof. Do you know what SCKS? I knew it wasn't realistic. That's why I tried so DMN hard. Why I started the notebooks. Because I knew that I had to work harder than anyone else. That, realistically speaking, nothing I tried to become would be realistic because I'm quirkless. The only real future for us is to end up a statistic as another one of us ends our otherwise never-ending torment. Oh shit. Why's All Might such a D-dash? Who let him become a teacher? Language Hitoshi. Hizashi lightly scolds. Yeah, sorry Pops. Are you about finished so that I can continue to read? I'd like to get through at least one entry before I go to the hospital to check on the problem child. Shoyuta levels a look at his son and husband before turning his attention back to the notebook. I was going to do it too. Jump from that ledge. After all, my idol just told me my dreams weren't realistic and I didn't have a chance. That everyone had been right. But then I heard the explosions. So I ran. I don't even remember getting down from the roof. I only remember running and seeing Kaken with the sludge villain trying to suffocate him like he did me. All the heroes were just standing there. Complaining that they didn't have the right quirk, they were going to let him die by that villain without even trying. It was my fault anyway, so I rushed in since no one else was acting. I threw my bag at him, giving Kaken enough of a break so he could get a breath. Then All Might be there and able to save him. The other heroes praised Kaken for being brave while fighting for his life, while I got scolded. Typical. Why would I expect anything less? I know it was reckless, but I couldn't just stand there and let him die like they were planning on doing. They were supposed to be the heroes that save people. When I continued home, All Might somehow found me and told me how I encouraged him to act. That I could be a hero too. It's all I've ever wanted to hear from someone. Anyone. Finally, someone told me I could do it. Then he told me how his quirk could be passed down and that he wanted me to be his successor. But I have to train first. So All Might is going to have me clean Dagoba Beach's training, and I have to get it clean before the UK entrance exam in 10 months. Shuta's hands tighten on the book, his eyes flashing crimson as his hair starts to levitate. Idiot. What kind of person thinks that cleaning a beach is training? Especially enough training to try for the hero exam. It's no wonder the kid kept breaking bones. I would have expelled him if it wasn't for the apprehension test. The only thing that kept me from doing so was the fact that he had the drive to do better. On a different note, if All Might knew about all of this, why wasn't I informed? He was said, and well, justifiably so. Hizashi looks over at Shoyuta, tears in his eyes. Sho. The green bean, he almost died 3 times in that entry. Did All Might even think to have him checked out after the sludge villain incident? Shoyuta looks over at his husband with a shake of his head. I don't know, Zashi, I don't know. Hitoshi sits ramrod straight, face pale as realization slowly sinks in. I think I'm going to be sick. Hizashi looks at Hitoshi worriedly. What's wrong? At the sports festival, I told Midoriya that he didn't understand what it was like to be at a disadvantage. Since he had been blessed with a heroic quirk, it would be easy for him to reach his goal. When in reality, he suffered more than I did. It's one thing to have a villain's quirk and be treated like crap, but to not have a quirk at all, you're considered worse than dirt in today's society. Eri stands up, her hands on her hips. That's not true. Deku is a hero. My hero doesn't deserve for people to think less of him. No one deserves that. Hizashi pulls Eri into his arms, nuzzling the top of her head. Baby bear, it's all right. No one in here thinks less of Deku. Remember, we all want to help him? That being said, why don't you get your shoes on so that we can all go visit, yeah? Grumpy Cat will bring the notebook so we can keep reading while we wait. Eri nods and moves to go get her shoes on. Hizashi takes the opportunity to get up and pulls his hair into a messy bun. Careful to make the frizz from the air-dried side of his head look intentional and not just him having a bad hair day. Hitoshi, you didn't know, and that's part of the sports festival. Whether you knew that or not, holding back would have been illogical. There will be battles where saying just the right or wrong thing will save your or someone else's life. Hitoshi looks up at Shoyuta from where he's still seated and gives a nod of understanding before getting up to put his shoes on. Shoyuta runs his hand through his hair while letting out a heavy sigh. He makes sure to grab his yellow sleeping bag with his free hand before heading out the door. Might as well take a nap when I can. Eri grasps Hitoshi's hand as they walk into the hospital. Her breathing quickened as she started to search the room in a panic. Hitoshi looks down at his sister and gives her hand a light squeeze before kneeling beside her. Want to go with me to the gift shop? Eri nods quickly as she reaches out to hold on to the hem of Hitoshi's shirt, clearly afraid of being left there. Taking Eri to the gift shop. Hitoshi doesn't bother to wait for a response before he turns and walks to the shop off to the side of the entrance. His pace is intentionally slow so that Eri can keep up without stumbling. Shoyuta watches the kids go before turning his tired gaze back to Hisashi. You going to find out if we can see him, or are you just going to stand there? Hisashi shoots Shoyuta a pair of finger guns with a grin. I'll go ask. Shoyuta closes his eyes for a moment as he resists the urge to roll them at the blonde's actions. Opening his eyes back up, he walks away from the desk and heads to the gift shop to keep an eye on his kids. Hisashi walks up to the nurse's desk with a bright smile. I'm here to see Izuku Midoriya? Yes, one moment. The nurse turns to the computer screen, typing rapidly. After a moment, she turns back to Hisashi. I'm sorry, but Midoriya was moved to the hero ward, so he is unable to have visitors. Hisashi reaches into his pocket and pulls out his hero license, which he then hands over to the nurse. I'm one of his teachers from UA. I, along with one of my colleagues, brought a classmate and a little girl he saved to visit. The nurse glances from the license up to Hisashi's face. Looking over the ID again, then over Hisashi a final time, she seems to believe that's who he truly is as she gives him a sharp nod. Sorry, can't be too careful, you know. Midoriya is in room 4013 on the 4th floor. You will have to scan your hero ID to gain access to the hero ward. When you reach Midoriya's room, there is a keypad for you to type your hero code into at the door. Principal Nedzu informed us that he wanted the 2-step verification used due to the circumstances surrounding the students this year. Only 2 visitors are allowed at a time, but there is a waiting room in the ward. Also, visiting hours run from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day unless directed by a member of our staff, or should a guardian or the patient decide otherwise. Thank you for your time and diligence. Hisashi gives the nurse a bright smile before walking to the gift shop and poking his head in. Everyone REA.dy? Stumbling on his words, he lets out a guffaw at the scene in front of him. Eri has managed to get no less than 8 balloons tied to Shuta's wrists, and in his arms is a white teddy bear that is bigger than the girl herself. Hitoshi seems to be even worse off as he is holding an arm full of thankfully potted flowers. In his hair nestles a small brown cat plush, and he has ribbons tied to his wrists. Eri, honey, do you think we have enough? The girl in question looks from Hitoshi to Shoyuta before turning to look at the single card in her hand before she nods. Yeah, I think we're ready. Hisashi grins as he catches a glimpse of his husband's eyes glowing red in his annoyance as he walks to the checkout. Handing over his debit card, he doesn't even ask the price. He really doesn't want to know how much this kid just spent in a gift shop of all places. Walking back over to the little group, he picks up Shuta's discarded sleeping bag and the notebook that rests on top of it with a smile. Shoyuta walks out of the gift shop and leads his family to the elevators. Eri, push the button. Eri takes a nervous step forward and presses the up button on the elevator. She steps aside as soon as one of the doors opens with a ding, going back to Hisashi's side. Loading up into the elevator, Shoyuta glares as someone approaches, trying to get on the elevator with them. Hitoshi barely manages to shift the flowers around, so he has a free hand to push the close door button after selecting which floor they need. You both are so bad. There was plenty of room for that person to ride with us. Hisashi lightly scolds the other 2 males, though it's half-hearted at best since he can't stop smiling. Shut up, bird. Hisashi lets out a squawk of indignation just as the doors open to their floor. Huffing, he dramatically stomps out of the elevators and heads down the hall, with Eri quickly following behind him. I didn't have enough coffee for this. Shoyuta glares at the bear in his arms as he follows after the 2 morning people. Hitoshi nods his head in agreement as they walk together. I didn't have enough sleep for this. Walking up to the double doors that lead to the hero ward, they both pause, looking at each other's arms. What took you both so long? Let's go. I want to see the green bean. Hisashi quickly swipes his ID before practically shoving Shoyuta and Hitoshi through the doorway. Eri walks with her family quietly to Midoriya's room. Her hand reached up to grip Hisashi's jacket nervously. Hizashi looks down at Eri with a soft smile as he types his hero code onto the keypad, allowing Shoyuta and Hitoshi into the room before kneeling down beside Eri. What's wrong, princess? Is Deku really going to be okay? Hizashi lets out a soft sigh as he sets the sleeping bag and journal down. He wraps his arms around Eri, tugging her close. I wish I could tell you for certain that he will be, but the truth is, baby bear, I don't know. I don't want this whole thing to upset you, and I know that it's rough being here in the hospital, to begin with, right? Eri nods her head into Hizashi's shoulder as she hugs him tight. When it's your turn to go in there, whether it be with me, Shoyuta, or even Hitoshi, if at any point it becomes too much for you, you let us know, alright? You don't have to see him. He's pretty beat up from what Shoyuta told me last night. No one will think any less of you, and if you decide you don't want to be here at the hospital at all, then one of us will take you, or we can call Nem. Your feelings matter, no matter where we are. Eri pulls back from the hug, wiping the tears from her eyes. I want to try. I want to be his hero too. But if it's too much, I promise I'll tell someone. She holds out her pinky finger towards Hizashi, a small smile crossing her face as she watches him link fingers with her. It's a promise then. Inside the room, Shoyuta sits the large teddy bear on the window ledge, so it's out of the way, before walking over to Hitoshi and helping him set the flowers down. That done, he unties the balloons that are wrapped around his wrists and sets the ribbons under the flowers. Taking the last balloon, he walks back over to the teddy bear and ties the ribbon around the bear's arm, so it looks like it's holding the balloon. Hitoshi's eyes hadn't left the bed since he walked into the room. How could he look away from the sight? That was the sunshine boy of one, laying there, hooked up to two different machines with his arms bandaged. Shoyuta bumps Hitoshi with his shoulder before he reaches up into gravity-defying purple hair to get the cat plush that was stashed there. He gives a fond smile as he walks away to go sit near the bed. Problem child. He gently places the plush on Izuku's stomach before very carefully picking up one of the boy's hands to place upon the toy. Hitoshi rubs the back of his head sheepishly. Dad. What do I say? Can he hear me? Shoyuta snorts in barely contained amusement. Just say what you want to say. Hi is a good place to start. Who knows if he can hear you, but it's better to err on the side of caution, yes. Hitoshi looks absolutely mortified. Oh God, if he can hear us, he just heard me call you Dad. He'll be asking me questions constantly when he wakes up. He pauses for a moment before walking closer to the bed. Hey Midoriya, you can. I guess. If you want. Ask me whatever you want. That would be okay. You just have to wake up first. Up close to the bed, he frowns as he notes the lack of any other injuries besides his arms, and he looks over at his dad in question. Did he? Shoyuta gives a small nod as he reaches up to give Green Curls a hesitant pat. Yeah, kid, he did, but we're keeping this quiet, got it? Hitoshi just nods in response. Shoyuta stands back up and walks to the door. Come on, Hitoshi, let's let Mike and Eri have their turn to visit. Hitoshi blinks tiredly as he heads out the door. You didn't even say much to him. I did the talking. Training. Hitoshi stops just outside of Midoriya's room and stares at his dad. Training for what? Figured it would be easier for you to talk to someone unconscious before you join 1A and have to talk to people who can respond. Shoyuta turns to Mike, giving him a nod before glancing down at Eri. You good, kiddo? Eri takes a deep breath as she nods. I'm scared because this reminds me of when I was here, but I have to be brave. I want to be his hero. She turns around and grabs Mick's hand before all but dragging him into the room, pausing only long enough for him to re-enter his hero code. Journal entry. A little while later, Hizashi returns to the waiting room carrying Eri, who has snuggled into his shoulder. Shoyuta looks up from his phone, eyes seeming even more tired than before. How'd it go? He just looks like he's sleeping. I know he is hurt. I saw the bandages around his arms like I used to have. But for the most part, Deku just looks like he's sleeping. Eri twists her head around to look at her dad and brother, her eyes conveying how surprised she is. Shoyuta gives a slight nod. You did good, kiddo. I know that wasn't easy to go in there. Eri blinks before letting a smile slowly spread across her face at the praise. Hizashi carefully sets Eri down on the ground and grins as she launches herself at the tired pro, who lets out a grunt at the impact. Getting old there, Sho? A soft snort is heard from the corner of the waiting room. Shut your mouth, Hizashi, you too, Hitoshi. Shoyuta glares at the two previously mentioned individuals while patting Eri's back. Can we read more of the journal? I want to help Deku. Eri asks quietly into Shuta's shoulder before pulling away slightly to look into his eyes. Yeah, everyone, get settled. Eri moves to sit in the chair beside Shoyuta while watching how the rest of her family gets settled in. Shoyuta reaches over to grab the journal off of his sleeping bag and opens it to the correct page while letting out a tired sigh. Dear journal, my limbs hurt so bad. I've been hauling tires, shelving units, refrigerators, and pretty much everything else for about 4 months now. All Might keeps reminding me that a quirkless person can't get into Yua, let alone into heroics. But I'm so tired. Trying to clean the beach, follow the schedule he's created, do schoolwork, and still work on my analysis while being injured is too much. The kids and the teachers at school are getting worse. If I score above 80% on anything, the teachers rip up my work, marking it as incomplete. Today one of the teachers told me, cheating is unacceptable even from a worthless problem child like you. I wasn't cheating though. I just like to learn. Shoyuta says this in a breath as he silently rereads what the teacher told Izuku. His grip loosened on the book, causing it to fall to the ground. Hizashi quickly moves to kneel in front of Shoyuta, hand reaching out to pick up the journal before he offers it back to the other man with a sad smile. It's not your fault. Shoyuta glares at Hizashi, practically hissing, How can you say that, Hizashi? That's what I've called him since the beginning of school. I've called him that to his face since work studies. How often did I trigger him by calling him a problem child? Standing up, Shoyuta brushes past his husband. Don't tell me it's not my fault when you don't know that. None of us do. Even if it's not, I sure as hell contributed to it. He lets out a frustrated groan as he walks past his kids, heading down the hallway to try and clear his head. Hizashi sighs as he stands back up and takes Shuta's seat, giving a quick ruffle to Eri's hair as he glances at Hitoshi. You both still good to continue? Getting a nod from both his kids, Hizashi opens the journal back up to continue where they left off. The kids are being encouraged to use their quirks on me more. Apparently, it's training for them. Since I can't do anything helpful, I'm supposed to show my usefulness by being a training dummy so that the rest of the kids can get stronger. Kaken left burns on my shoulders, and the nurse won't treat them. Told me to stop instigating things, then maybe your peers won't use their quirks on you. So, another self-treated injury. I'm pretty much an expert at it at this point. Though, the burns make it harder to lift the trash at the beach. But I can't show any weakness. If I do, I might lose my only chance at being a hero. I'm going to choke him with my capture weapon. Hizashi blinks as he registers the outburst before turning to look at his son. Who, Hitoshi? All of them, but at this moment, Bakugo. First, the suicide baiting, now physical abuse. Yet I was the kid growing up being called a villain. Eri chews on her bottom lip for a few before turning curious red eyes to look at her family. Koda told me how he punched Deku in the no-no bits when they met. Can I punch Bakugo in the no-no bits? Hizashi looks absolutely horrified at the question. Yes. Hitoshi can't help but take advantage of their pop's shock as a Cheshire grin slides across his face while he moves to sit in front of Eri. Do you remember how to throw a punch? We wanted to hurt him, but not you, right? Eri nods enthusiastically as she brings her right hand up, curling her fingers and then placing her thumb on top of them. Like this. Don't tuck your thumb in, or you can break it. Hitoshi nods, his grin somehow becoming a bit more manic. Hizashi watches the kids for a moment as his crisis ends. Eri, why don't you just kick him? Then you won't have to worry about it. He's taller, and I don't think I can kick that high. Eri turns her attention back to Hitoshi, who is holding up a hand for her to hit. She sticks the tip of her tongue out for a moment as she concentrates on a slow-mo punch. Nodding that she likes that punch, she sks her tongue back into her mouth, so she doesn't accidentally bite it before pulling her arm back and giving a nice punch to her brother's hand. Not bad, baby bear. But if you're going to do the punching, you're going to want to start out standing sideways. That way, when you bring your fist forward, you shift your body forward, allowing you to put more weight into the punch. Do you want Hitoshi to show you? Eri looks up at Hizashi with a small nod. Hizashi steps back a bit, holding up his hand that is not holding the journal, then looks at Hitoshi. Ready? Hitoshi doesn't bother to respond. Instead, he gets up and enters the stance that Hizashi mentioned. Standing sideways, he shifts his body forward as he lands a punch on the offered hand. Hizashi grins at both of them, clearly proud. Doing it like this, Eri, you have the weight of your body in the punch. When you punched Hitoshi, you were just using the force generated by your arm alone. So, this way will hurt more? Eri tilts her head to the side curiously. Yep. Hizashi is practically bouncing in his excitement from his kids' learning. Even if it isn't the best place to teach them how to throw a punch. Would you like to try again? Eri almost leaps to a standing position in her excitement. Yes, please. Hizashi laughs as he walks over to Eri. He patiently guides her through the proper stance and movements while Hitoshi moves to kneel in front of Eri again. This time with both hands held up together to give her a bigger target and to keep her from accidentally hitting him in the face. After a few practice movements with Hizashi, Eri takes a deep calming breath before going through the motions on her own and landing a punch to the center of Hitoshi's hands. Hitoshi moves his hands, slightly shaking them in surprise at the sting in them from the hit. His Cheshire grin spread out across his face again. Good job. That was great, baby bear. I'm so proud of you. Eri bounces happily, a small happy giggle escaping as she does. Thus, the darkness around him was everywhere. So thick that it seemed almost tangible, like a heavy pressure pressing against his body. In the distance, Izuku could hear heavy breathing with occasional beeps. The sounds are the only thing keeping him grounded in the never-ending nothingness. Occasionally he could hear the distant voices of people talking. Still, they were always too far away that he didn't know who they belonged to. He seemed to tire himself out more as he listened for too long. But something deep inside was telling him that he needed to identify the voices. Is it possible for you to be tired when you're dead? Maybe that's where that saying about sleeping when you're dead came from. But then why could he hear? Was he a ghost? That would be his luck. Trying to get away from it all only to end up stuck here instead. There it was again. The low chatter of voices, but they are not distinguished enough for him to make out who they belong to or what is being said. Looking around, Izuku tried to locate where the voices originated, only to fail. How could this even happen? I don't know who I'm more mad at, the kid or everyone else in his life. The bald-haired man grumps at the others around him in the old ruins. That's enough, Fifth. We've seen the torment that Ninth has gone through and continues to do so. A man with white hair folds his hands and rests his chin on them as he looks around at the other one for all users with him. I told you first that he was not the right fit to be a successor. How is he going to defeat all for one and save everyone when he can't even save himself? The white-haired man known as First gives a soft smile to the man with his hair pulled up into a spiky ponytail. How can we expect him to save himself? Lest you forget, I was dying when you and Second decided to save me instead of killing me because of my ties to All for One. I didn't save myself. Which then presents the question, why has no one saved Ninth? The only woman in the group looks around at the other users before focusing on the smoky form of the 8th user. A frown slips into place as she watches it shrink back. It's a bit late now, 7th. All we can do is hope that 9th recovers. That Eraserhead was able to get there in time to truly save him. First replies. Worthless problem child. Problem child? I'm no better than his past teachers. Shoyuta huffs as he walks down the hall, coming to a stop in front of Midoriya's room. After a moment of deliberation, he enters his hero code and heads inside. Just me, Pierre Midoriya. Shoyuta walks over to the chair beside the bed and takes a seat. How you holding up? Realizing what he just asked, Shoyuta tilts his head back slightly, glancing up towards the ceiling as he pinches the bridge of his nose. Sorry kid, that was stupid. I'm no good at this. But I owe you an apology. Shoyuta reaches forward, carefully taking Izuku's hand closest to him into his own grip. a frown marring his features as he feels how bony and crooked the fingers are. I never meant problem child as an insult. I should have thought how that might come across to you. He shakes his head, his voice coming out a bit garbled until he clears his throat of the emotions threatening to break free. I should have seen the signs. As an underground hero, it's my job to be able to see those signs, and I failed you. Even when they were so obvious. The way you didn't like loud noises. How you tried to appear smaller when anyone was in a bad mood. How you always scan a room before you enter it. I overlooked so many flags and I'm sorry. As he stands up, Shoyuta gently gives a small ruffle to Izuku's hair. Eri told us how you talked to her when she had bad. Thank you for that. She also told us how you wrote when you couldn't verbally express what you wanted to say. So I went through your backpack. Found a lot of stuff in there, kid. You could have told me or any of the other teachers. We would have helped you. But I get it. Taking a moment to gather his thoughts, Shoyuta lets out a small huff. I found your journal in your bag too. We're reading it. By we, I mean my family, not your classmates. They don't know anything. It's not our place. Just like we're keeping the fact that you're here as a need to know. Shoyuta walks away from the bed with a sigh. I gotta go check on the idiots waiting and get in touch with Nedzu. I'll stop back by later. Maybe Hizashi can give me tips so I don't sound like an idiot. A small huff of amusement leaves him as he stops at the door to the room. Oh, and kid? Quirk or no quirk, you would have the potential to become a hero. That said, he walks out of the room and closes the door behind him. Walking back to the waiting room, Shoyuta stops as he sees Hizashi bouncing. Letting out a grunt, he goes over and grabs his sleeping bag from the floor, then takes the journal from Hizashi before heading down the hall towards the exit. Let's go. We can come back later. Hizashi watches Shoyuta leave, then nods to Hitoshi and Eri. Come on, kiddos. You heard Sho. He flashes them both a bright smile as he follows after his husband. Journal entry. Separating entries. Shoyuta sits down with his family once they all arrive home. The day took an emotional toll on all of them. Shoyuta has joined Hizashi and Eri on one of their couches while Hitoshi lays on the floor, joining their cats in the sunspot coming in from the window. Shaking his head at the scene, he opens the journal and starts to read some of the other entries. I collapsed today. All Might scolded me for not following the plan he created for me. It's not like I meant to. His plan didn't account for the endurance and stealth training I had to do at school to avoid my peers. Nor does it account for the fact that I can't eat the way he wants me to. Mom only buys the bare minimum for the house, so it's kind of hit or miss whether I get regular meals or not. Oh well, just 3 more months till the entrance exam. Wait please. I think I'm going to need a stuffy before we continue. Eri gets up from her spot and quickly runs down the hall to her room to grab what she wants. When she returns to the living room a few minutes later, she has her arms filled with different stuffed animals. I thought maybe everyone could use one if we're already starting out sad. Eri says as she passes a Black Panther stuffed animal to Shoyuta, a golden retriever for Hizashi, a sloth for Hitoshi, and a snowy owl for herself. Once they are all passed out, she retakes her seat and nods to her dad to continue reading. Today was the UA's physical exam, and I got to see so many heroes. There was so much that happened, like All Might made me eat a strand of hair before the exam right after I finished cleaning the beach. I got his quirk just in time to save a girl with a gravity quirk from being crushed by a robot. They call that robot a zero-pointer because it's not worth anything to defeat it. I didn't care about getting the points for that, I just wanted to save the girl. Using the quirk did cause me quite a bit of pain as I ended up breaking a lot of my bones. Guess that's technically better than all of my limbs getting completely blown off like All Might told me could happen. Because the quirk didn't manifest until almost the end of the exam, I didn't get a single point. So I failed. I couldn't get into UA, just like everyone always said. I should have just listened to them years ago. I really am just a useless Deku. I guess good news does always come with bad news. Today I found out that I somehow got accepted to UA. Apparently, there were rescue points, so I made it in. I'm not entirely sure about that, but regardless, I'm grateful. The bad news is Mom left. She said she found a place she likes and is moving out. She told me the apartment is paid up for another 4 months, But after that, I'll have to figure something out on my own. She says it has to be this way. She doesn't want to see me killed trying to chase an impossible dream. I don't understand. I thought things would be easier now that I have a quirk. But even having a quirk now, Mom doesn't want me. I know that technically I've been alone since that doctor told me I was quirkless, but she had still been here. So I could ignore not having friends or anyone on my side. But now I'm going to be completely alone. Today was the first day of school, and it was emotional, to say the least. Kaken is in my class again, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Aizawa hates me. So, not much change from middle school. The only difference was during the apprehension test, when the whole class had to use our quirks to show if we had potential. During that, Kaken got mad when he saw me use my quirk, and Mr. Aizawa didn't let him get close enough to use his quirk on me. That's never happened. I've never had a teacher stand up for me or protect me before. So that's a big difference compared to what I'm used to. Plus, I think I may have made friends. I'm not quite sure, and I don't want to get my hopes up. Usually, when people want to be my friend, it's just for a cruel joke. Hitoshi moves to snuggle Dirtbag with a frown. Hey, Pops. Yeah, kitten? Hizashi looks over at Hitoshi while giving him a soft, encouraging smile. Midder. Hitoshi paused. It didn't feel right calling him by his last name now, knowing that his mother abandoned him. Izuku. Do you think he really meant it? That he truly just wanted to be my friend? Hizashi gives a brief frown before his smile returns, though now it has the underlying notes of sadness hidden within. I don't think he'd joke about that, kitten. Especially with what your dad just read. He knew that feeling himself. So yeah, I think he really wanted to be your friend. Hitoshi squeezes the sloth plush close after he lets Dirtbag run, clearly not in the mood to be scratched. I'm so stupid. Shoyuta gets up, walks over to his son, and kneels beside him. You're not stupid. Mistakes were made. We all made them. Now we just have to learn and try to make a difference and make sure there's not another incident like this one again. Hitoshi nods slowly, knowing that he disagrees with what his dad is saying, but unable to argue because he knows. He knows that his dad is beating himself up over this whole mess as well, so he just leaves it alone and nuzzles into the stuffed animal. Shoyuta pinches the bridge of his nose as he pulls out his phone. I need to make a call that I've been putting off. I didn't want to talk to the rat, but knowing the real reason no one could get through to his mother's phone changed things. Zashi, you got the kids for a bit? I mean, it's not like we're a lot of work, I'm a teenager, and Eri isn't a baby. Shoyuta glances back at Hitoshi while standing up. You both are still gremlins. Hizashi grins great big as he nods. Yeah, I got the kiddos. I'm going to make a late lunch. Want anything specific? Shoyuta shakes his head as he heads down the hallway to his and Hizashi's room to make his call. Avaricious. Deceitful. Intolerant. Pomaniac. Oh, how he could go on about those nasty little traits. Netsu hates how those callous words describe so many of the human race. He hates that they are selfish individuals, only caring about themselves and their own personal gains. It's this specific kind of selfishness that has him so worked up. Having handpicked each staff member at U.A, he has a certain amount of trust in his employees despite his complicated past. Because each of his staff has earned what level of confidence he has in them. They each have their own goal of making the world better and more inclusive. That's why the school system is so flexible in its teaching methods so that they can make that difference. An example of this is Aizawa's willingness to expel anyone if they lack potential. He would rather crush a child's dream leaving them hurt and angry than allow them to continue and foolishly get themselves or others killed. Due to the flexible teaching methods and the opportunity to make the changes they want, all his staff has a measure of trust in each other and in him as their boss. That usually translates over to the students. They get to see adults and not just heroes, all working together with a level of understanding that only stems from having earned each other's trust. This affects the student body, helping them learn to trust and rely on their classmates and, in most cases, learn to trust their teachers. So the fact that one of their students is in this position is enough to have him seething. Phantom pains lingering along the scar that runs through his eye are enough of a reminder from his time as an experiment. He expected to be approached by a specific member of his staff for help. He didn't expect looking into the past of one of his students to be enough for him to book an appointment with his own therapist. Leaning back in his chair, Nezu takes a sip of his tea while his black eyes gain a certain gleam as he watches the screen in front of him. Watches as Izuku is sat at the front of the class with a muzzle strapped around his head. His middle school uniform burnt, leaving behind angry red, starburst-shaped welts. The class faces the front with twisted glee as their teacher removes Izuku's shoes and socks. The teacher looks to the ground beside him, looking over the items. A torch lighter, a dull, rusty knife, bolt cutters, and a pair of fish skinning pliers. Mouth curving up into a snarl at the scene currently playing. Nezu nearly breaks his teacup as he slams it down in favor of picking up his phone. "Ah, Aizawa, I have that information you asked for ready. I was hoping that you would be able to have a bit of a chat with me soon. Perhaps over tea." "Splendid. I'll be anxiously awaiting your arrival." "Oh, and Aizawa? I highly recommend that you leave your kids home for this." Nezu hangs up his phone, turning back to the footage just in time to see bloodied feet shoved roughly back into familiar red shoes. The green-haired boy now holding a small pile of flesh in one of his hands and in the other. Two tiny bones that have been cleaned meticulously. Arriving at the school about an hour later, Shoyuta and Hizashi made their way to Nezu's office, the door already open upon their arrival. Walking inside, Shoyuta immediately activated erasure as he looked around the room, his husband looking about a second away from his own wail of attack. Nezu glances up at his guests, teeth bared in a snarl before he seems to remember himself. Shaking his head, he motions to the prepared tea. "Please help yourselves. I must apologize for the nature of some of the information I have been able to gather has been less than ideal." Hair falling back around his shoulders as he lets go of his quirk, Shoyuta quickly treats his eyes with the eye drops he carries around with him. That seems to be an understatement if it can cause you to go almost feral. Hizashi walks over to get his tea and takes a seat as he tries to relax now that the tension has dispersed. "What got you so upset?" Nezu sets his teacup down to fold his hands in front of him. "I have Detective Tsukachi looking into Midoriya's mother at the moment, as she seems to have removed herself from the picture. That being said, I focused on the rest of what Aizawa told me was in his journal. About Kaken, his teacher. I'll also be looking into All Might." Shoyuta pulls out the journal from his bag and places it on Nezu's desk. "If you remember, I told you that Kaken is Katsuki Bakugo from my class." Nezu bares his teeth for a moment before grabbing the notebook and flipping through it. "Yes, I'm well aware. So what would you like to do?" "I want to know what prompts that reaction out of you at the mention of Bakugo's name," Hizashi states before taking a sip of his tea. Setting the notebook aside, Nezu looks over at his computer screen in disdain. "Let's just say the notebook is tame to some of the things I have borne witness to." "What do you mean by that?" Shoyuta narrows his eyes at his boss. "I happen to obtain access to one Aldra Middle School's security footage." Nezu takes a sip of his tea, letting the warmth soothe the anger building inside him again. "Are we really going to play coy?" Shoyuta huffed. "Show." Hizashi reaches over to place his hand on his husband's elbow to help keep him grounded. Shoyuta glares at his husband, but his body visibly relaxes. "What I'm saying is that Izuku Midoriya was, for lack of a better word, tortured throughout his middle school career. If you wish to see a copy of the footage, I will send it to your email, but I suggest you wait till you finish the notebook so you can see a bit of what he goes through now. Think of it as a way to prepare you for what you may see in the footage. Also, I must insist you not let your children watch the footage." Hizashi frowns. "Is it really that bad?" "I won't lie to you, Yamada. It was enough to make me schedule an appointment with my therapist." Hizashi coughs as his eyes widen in surprise at the answer. Nezu takes a sip of his tea before looking over at Shoyuta. "Aizawa, while you're here, I have to apologize for my part in this. I knew of the circumstances of Midoriya's quirk and how he was chosen by All Might to be his successor. I was, however, unaware of what happened up to the point of him receiving the quirk and trying for the entrance exams." Shoyuta turned his glare to Nezu, eyes glowing red as his quirk activated. "Did you tell them not to tell me?" Nezu shakes his head. I believed you would serve Midoriya best if you knew, but All Might was adamant no one else could know. Nezu sat beside the hospital bed, watching the rise and fall of Izuku's chest. The constant movement was a soothing balm to his irritated soul. He had come straight here after meeting with Aizawa and Yamada, needing to see for himself the state of the boy that means so much to so many people at his school. Oh, I didn't realize he had a visitor. I apologize. My name is Dr. Eren. Nezu looks over at the man giving a slight nod, not in the mood for his usual introduction. I am Nezu, principal of UA. I'd like to know how he's doing. Dr. Eren glances over the chart for a moment before smiling. You're on his approved list. So that won't be a problem. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any change since his admittance. I'd like to get an EEG scheduled to see if there is any brain activity. When Midoriya came in, he had lost a lot of blood, and he was also struggling to breathe. Both of them alone is a concern, but to have both problems, to be frank, I'm concerned about the lack of oxygen to his brain. Nezu looks from the doctor to Izuku, a paw moving to rest against the greenette's hand. I understand. What you're saying is there is a possibility that Midoriya, here, could be brain dead. Correct. Exactly. If that turns out to be the case, the decision will have to be made on whether you wish to keep his body alive or if you should pull the plug. I'm very sorry. Dr. Eren quietly moves around the room, checking over the boy's ports, vitals, and everything else. Go ahead and schedule the EEG and any other test that may be needed. Also, I need to update his list of approved visitors. Nezu pats Izuku's hand before hopping down out of the chair. Of course, if you go to the nurse's desk out front, they will get the update changed for you. Dr. Eren finishes his check and heads to the door, pausing for a moment. May I ask you a question? Nezu lets a small laugh out. You just did, but go ahead. Do you know why he's missing both of his little toes? Nezu snarls, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. It's part of the reason I need to update his approved list. This boy was abused long before his attempt. Of course, my apologies. Dr. Eren bows his head before leaving to continue the rest of his rounds. Nezu looks back at Izuku, giving a shake of his head. I hope that you wake up for all of our sakes. However, as someone who has been in your position, if you don't wake up, I don't think anyone who is in the know about this will blame you. Walking up to the nurse's desk, Nezu clears his throat as he waits for them to notice him. A nurse walking up to the desk stops as she sees the short chimera and smiles softly. Hello, you must be Principal Nezu. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Talia. Can I help you, sir? Nezu offers a small smile. Indeed I am. I need to update a patient's approved visitor list. Of course, sir. I'll be happy to do that for you. Talia smiles as she goes behind the desk, rummaging through a drawer. She finds the file she needs. Returning to Nezu, she briefly pauses to get a clipboard and pen. We just need you to fill out this form and write down the approved individual's name. She hands him the clipboard, form, and pen happily. Thank you. Nezu quickly fills out the form before handing it back to the young nurse. Taking the form back, the nurse seems surprised. Oh wow, are you sure you only want these 7 people to visit? Nezu nods. Of course. If I wanted more, I would have stated. However, this is a suspected abuse case. Therefore, all correspondence is allowed to go to only the approved visitors I have listed. Talia nods as she quickly takes the document, handing it to the guy at the computer to input into the system. We'll take care of him, Principal Nezu. You have our word. Be sure that you do, Nezu says before walking away. Journal entry. Shoyuta looks at his email, glaring at the unopened email from Nezu that has an attachment. The attachment he knows is the footage from Aldera. Moving to click it, he lets out a grunt as something hits the side of his head. Rubbing his head, Shoyuta narrows his eyes as he catches sight of a green grape rolling away on the floor. Snapping his head up, he looks towards the dining room, not even surprised to see Hizashi with the bag of grapes. A grape, really? Don't really me, Shoyuta. Nezu said we should finish the journal first. Don't think I don't know what you were about to do. Shoyuta glares at his husband before letting out a sigh. Fine, I'll read the journal first then. Hizashi rolls his eyes but picks up the bag of grapes and makes his way to the living room to sit next to the other man. The kids are going to be mad when they get back from NEMS. I won't read too far ahead. I just need to do something. I can't just sit here. Shaking his head, Hizashi pulls the blanket down from the back of the couch. You could always take a nap, so you can get caught up on some sleep before school starts again in a few days. Shoyuta grunts but allows himself to be covered. Journal first, then nap. But you are not moving. Oh, I'm not. Shoyuta doesn't dignify him with a response as he moves around till he's sprawled out on the couch, his head lying in the blonde's lap. Hizashi huffs dramatically. That's not fair. Shoyuta tilts his head up to give a Cheshire grin at his husband before opening the journal. My ears won't stop ringing. Recovery girl said it should go away in just a few days, but I need to avoid loud noises. Otherwise, I am at risk of losing my hearing permanently. All Might paired Kaken and me against each other in battle training. We had partners, but I knew that Kaken would immediately come after me. Like he always does. It gave him the best opportunity to put me in my place, as he always says. The explosions were a lot stronger this time due to the gauntlets he has as part of his hero costume. I barely dodged in time to avoid being injured worse than I already was. How did anyone think that giving him those was a good idea? I got elected as class president today. That was scary. Thankfully I was able to get someone else to do it instead. See, there was an alarm during lunch telling all of us to evacuate. It wasn't until a third-year student passed that we discovered that security level 3 meant someone had infiltrated the building. Even though the alarm told everyone to evacuate in an orderly fashion, it was still chaos. Students were trampling other students in their rush to get out. How any of them expect to become heroes when they can't maintain order in a panic is beyond me. Third years having the most experience should have helped the second years. Second years then should have helped the first years. But no. Ida, who is in my class, had to become a human exit sign to get control of the chaos. When we all returned to class, I gave him my class president position. He has the confidence and knowledge needed for it. I would have just dragged the class down. Rescue training. That sounds like a good thing to learn as a hero, right? Yeah, it turned out horribly. Real villains showed up. Mr. Aizawa got severely injured because he was trying to protect all of us. I couldn't do anything to keep him from getting hurt. I'm so useless. I guess once a Deku, always a Deku, right? Pathetic. Completely and utterly pathetic. I got to meet another person who knows about my quirk. Detective Tsukachi is All Might's friend, so he had been informed years ago, apparently. But what I don't understand is if All Might could tell him, why can't I tell anyone? Oh shit. I just thought of something. Mr. Aizawa. He tried to protect all of us in class. Does that mean he was trying to protect me as well? Why would he do that? It's just a waste of his time, and I'm not worth it. I don't understand. You were worth it, kid. Still are. Replying to a book now, show? Hizashi looks down at his husband with a cheeky smile. Shut up, Bert. I wasn't talking to you. Shoyuta huffs as he scrunches down further under the blanket as if to hide. Right. We covered that. You were talking to the book. Hizashi laughs as he sees just the slightest of pink start to dust Shuta's cheeks before his face is hidden by the journal. I learned a few new things today. During my battle with Shinso, when he used his quirk on me, I was able to see 7 or 8 shadowy people in my mind. They gave me a single moment of clarity to break out of Shinso's mind control. All Might said that the quirk is passed down like an Olympic torch. So does that mean I'm linked to the past? Or is this quirk just haunted? Also, Todoroki told me about his parents' quirk marriage and how his scar is due to his mom pouring boiling hot water on his face. Because all she could see was endeavor in his left side. That's why I had to save him. I had to remind him that the fire is his quirk, not his dad's, and I did it. For once, I wasn't useless. I took the hits and lost the match, but it was worth it because I got Todoroki to use his fire. I saved him. I saved him from himself and the untimely death he could face in the future due to not using all of his power. In return, I got Recovery Girl telling All Might and me that she won't treat my wounds anymore. Well, it was nice while it lasted. Guess it's a good thing I'm an expert at hiding injuries and bandaging my own wounds. I just thought that UA would be different. I forgot that good things never last for me. I almost forgot. All Might told me earlier that before this quirk had been passed to him, he was quirkless too. Yeah, the whole not being able to be a hero hurts a lot worse, knowing that if anyone should have understood how I felt, it would have been him. Hizashi quickly grabs a pillow and screams into it, not that it does any good to muffle his quirk-activated anger. Shoyuta tilts his head up to glare at his husband, activating his own quirk in annoyance. Hizashi, stop. You're giving me dry eye. Hizashi closes his mouth while smiling tightly. Sorry, grumpy cat. There's just so much there to unpack, you know? The fact that Izuku's quirk may be haunted. The whole thing with him knowing about Todoroki way before any of us did. How he sacrificed himself to help Todoroki. That recovery girl won't treat him anymore, and All Might was quirkless. The more he lists, the louder he gets. But the glaring onyx gaze helps to remind him not to activate his quirk. I know how you feel, Zashi, I'm angry as well, but we're doing what we can, and we already informed Nedzu. Shoyuta closes his eyes for a brief moment before looking back at his husband as he feels him start to shake. What, Hizashi? A previously quirkless person told another quirkless person to be realistic. Knowing full well that being quirkless in a quirked world is basically a death sentence. Shoyuta covers his eyes with an arm. You're thinking that he knew the kid was suicidal? Hizashi lets out a depressed sigh. That All Might lost touch with his past self and became one of those bigoted individuals that believe only those with quirks amount to anything. Shoyuta groans as he sets the journal aside. He could know, or he could just be a complete idiot. We'll just have to keep him away from Midoriya. Hizashi runs his fingers through Shuta's hair. Yeah, you're right. Okay, take a rest before the kids get back, Sho. Love you. Love you too, Zashi. Journal entry. Daddy. Papa. We're home. Eri, baby bear, remember we have to be quiet coming home. What if Dad is sleeping? You don't really want to wake him, do you? Hitoshi looks down at his sister, a questioning look on his face as he waits for her answer. I'm sorry, Toshi. I forgot. Eri's eyes turn downcast as she realizes her mistake, shoulders slumping in defeat. Hitoshi reaches a hand up to nervously rub the back of his head, eyes darting around in a small bout of panic. You're fine, baby bear. We took a nap a bit ago, but we're just waiting for our favorite little listeners to show up. Hizashi is quick to try and put his kids' minds at ease, even though he just wants to wrap them up in his arms. That was made impossible by the dark-haired man still lying across his lap. Eri runs over to her parents and jumps up on the couch, flopping herself down on Shuta's legs. Hitoshi whips his head around, eyes locking on the forms of his parents as a sigh escapes him. Situational awareness, kid. Shoyuta grunts as he gets flopped on, but refuses to move too much so as not to grant Hizashi his freedom. Yeah, I hear ya. Hitoshi moves to sit on the other couch, careful not to disturb the cats. Daddy, can you read more since we're all here, please? Eri turns so she can look at Shoyuta as she speaks, a small smile tugging at her lips. Shoyuta rolls his eyes but picks up the journal from where it slid between him and the back of the couch. Flipping to the correct page, he starts to read. I get to go on an internship. That's so exciting. It's a hands-on experience, and apparently, the person I'm interning with is Gran Torino. He used to teach All Might. He was his homeroom teacher back when he was at Yuta, and he knows about One for All. As exciting as this is, if All Might's homeroom teacher got to know about OFA, then why can't I tell Mr. Aizawa? Wouldn't it be better for him to know? So he doesn't think I'm just a kid that is just lazy and unwilling to work towards my dream. Maybe he wouldn't hate me if he knew. Gran Torino is senile. When I arrived, he used ketchup and sausage links to pretend to be dead. Then proceeded to call me a wet blanket. I'm also concerned that he may have Alzheimer's, as he called me Tashinori before continuously asking me who I am. I learned how to use my power better, though. When I heated up some taiyaki in the microwave, it didn't cook properly because I didn't spread them out evenly, so some were still frozen in the center. Apparently, to use my power, I need to spread it out evenly throughout my body. instead of just focusing all of the power into the area I want to use, like my arm. The other day was a mess. Sorry I didn't have my journal with me at the hospital. I was snatched by a Nomo while on my internship. Ida had gone after the hero killer Stain in revenge because of him paralyzing his brother. How no one saw that coming, I have no idea. Anyways, after the fight with Stain, where Todoroki and I had to save Ida and the pro-hero native, when the other heroes showed up, a Nomo flew in and picked me up, carrying me away. Stain broke free of the rope binding him and rescued me by stabbing the Nomu in the exposed part of the brain. I'm not sure how I feel about Stain saving me. He should have just let me go. But then again, I want to die, not end up in the hands of the League, and that's probably where the Nomu was going to take me. All Might's homeroom teacher knew about his quirk. But the idiot didn't want me to know about my student's quirk? I almost expelled him. He would have been gone if he hadn't shown resourceful thinking on the first day. Due to no fault of his own. Shoyuta was said, eyes glowing red in his anger. Not bothered by her dad's anger, Eri reaches over to poke him in the cheek. Daddy, you're making your scary face again. Shoyuta looks at Eri for a moment before letting out a displeased grunt. Smiling wide, Eri nods her head as he calms down, and as soon as he does, her expression changes. Her eyes narrow, and she purses her lips together, trying to make herself look stern as she glares at Shoyuta. Do you really hate Izuku? Hitoshi snorts in amusement, seeing the face that Eri is giving to their dad. Hizashi isn't faring much better, a hand lifted to cover his mouth as he laughs, shoulders shaking from amusement. Shoyuta lets out a huff of annoyance and amusement at the face. No, Eri. I do not, nor have I ever, hated Izuku. Yes, I think he's a trouble magnet, but I do not hate him. Satisfied with the answer, Eri leans forward with a smile, giving Shoyuta a hug. Am I the only one that has a problem with the fact that this kid learned more from a microwave than he did from the hero he was interning with? Hizashi looks around at his family while running his fingers through Shuta's hair. Hitoshi shrugs. Personally, I'm more concerned about the fact that it was Stain that saved Izuku and not the other heroes that were on the scene. Shoyuta keeps his arms wrapped around Eri and groans, hearing the other two in the room. Hizashi, yes, that's a problem, but I guess we should be grateful that he went there and learned from the microwave. His eye twitches showing his annoyance, as that isn't something that should have to be said. Because if you recall, he wasn't breaking as many bones when he returned from internships. Hizashi leans against the back of the couch. I guess you're right. But I still don't like the fact that a microwave was his main teacher during internships. I know, Zashi, neither do I, but we can't change that. Turning his attention to his son Shoyuta all but groans in annoyance. As for the fact that a villain saved Midoriya instead of the heroes on the scene, that's because spotlight heroes are stupid. Excuse you. Hizashi huffs as he purposely tangles his fingers in Shuta's hair, giving a sharp tug on the dark locks. Shoyuta narrows his eyes at his husband, a look clearly promising payback, before turning back to Hitoshi. Sorry, most spotlight heroes are stupid. He then turns back to Hizashi. Better? Hizashi leans down, placing a kiss on Shuta's nose before smiling. Much thank you. Hitoshi rolls his eyes at his parents' behavior. Eri smiles as she watches them before taking the journal from Shoyuta and tossing it to Hitoshi. Will you read, please? Hitoshi catches the book and flips through the pages, skimming the contents in search of where they left off. His eyes narrow as he notes that there are a few entries that they missed, but he doesn't say anything. Getting to where they left off, he clears his throat as a sign of discomfort before starting to read. Today, All Might told me that his quirk can only be transferred if I will it to. Meaning that it can't be stolen, which is a huge relief, to be honest, because that means if villains find out, they can't take the quirk by force. On the same note, if All Might decides I'm not worth it, he can't order me to give up the quirk. He also told me about the quirk's history and how it originated with two brothers. One who was believed to be quirkless and the other who had the ability to take quirks and give them to others. One for All is a stockpiling quirk, and a quirk that passes down that gets stronger from each user. That's the quirk of the brother who was perceived as quirkless. The brother who can give and take quirks is known as All for One, who is apparently nearly immortal and is the person that is behind the League of Villains. The person who will be after me because of this quirk. Stop, Hitoshi. I can't right now. Shoyuta moves Eri off of him and sets her on the couch as he gets up, anger radiating from him. How could All Might be such a colossal idiot that he would give his quirk that has an enemy attached to it to a child? Show baby, why don't you take a break, alright? We won't read anymore, but I think you could use something to work on to take your mind off things. Shoyuta turns to look at Hizashi with a frown, but he sighs at the look he is receiving. Yeah, I'll go try to do some grading and lesson planning, maybe get ahead before we go back to class. Hizashi smiles up at his husband. Thank you, that's all I ask. He turns his attention to his kids with that same bright smile. Dance party? Yes. Eri bounces excitedly. Hitoshi doesn't bother to respond, just groaning as he sinks lower into the couch. Shoyuta snickers quietly as he walks down the hallway to his office. Thus, walking into his office, Shoyuta frowns as his eyes catch on a framed picture on one of his shelves. It was from the 1A Christmas party just before their break, where everyone was happy. At least I thought they were. He can't stop himself from moving closer to the picture, a hand reaching out as he sees the greenette. The smile there bright and vibrant as always, but his eyes. How did I not notice how there was no light to them? Running a hand down his face, Shoyuta sets the picture back down in its spot before continuing on his way to his desk. As he sits down, he narrows his eyes at his computer screen wondering how the demon rat always knew when he was free. Answering the video call, he let out a grunt of greeting. I had a feeling you would be about. Have you gotten a chance to watch the video yet, Aizawa? Nizu smiles, his eyes twinkling in something akin to mirth. He clearly already knows the answer he is going to get. Shoyuta moves a hand up so he can rub his temples, not in the mood for anything the rat may be planning. No, we haven't finished reading the journal yet. Why? Nizu claps his paws together, his eyes gleaming dangerously for just a moment. Excellent. I need you or Yamada to go to Aldra to obtain the footage legally. I have already informed them that we are wanting to see about prospective new Hero Corps students for the upcoming years since the winner of the sports festival came from their school. Shuta's eyes narrow as he barely looks up at his boss even while he's talking. When do you need us to go? Preferably day after tomorrow. They have proven to be quite willing to cooperate when they think that they will get more recognition. Shuta's lets a small sigh escape, the only sign of his displeasure. I'll go. But I won't play nice. Nizu flashes Shoyuta a knowing smile. I never expect you to play nice, Aizawa. I just expect you to act in a way befitting your place as a representative of UA. We can't have any emotional outbursts that risks jeopardizing the plan. Scoffing, Shoyuta leans closer to the screen face devoid of all emotion. Emotional outbursts. Do I seem like my husband to you? Taking a sip of his tea, Nizu turns his calm expression back to Shoyuta. Not at all, but you do seem like an overprotective father whose child was wronged. Shoyuta freezes for a moment as his brow furrows ever so slightly. He's not my kid. Regardless, Nizu doesn't bother to dignify that with a response. I simply want you to be Shoyuta Aizawa, teacher of Heroics 1A. The man who doesn't care about money, publicity, or other people's opinions. Just potential. You make it sound like we're different people. Nizu nods as he stares intently at Aizawa through the screen. There are times where it seems like you are. Shoyuta shifts in his seat so that he can lean forward and prop his head on his hand, exhaustion catching up with him. How is it going with Mrs. Midoriya? Nizu leans back in his seat, a deep frown coming across the Chimera's face. According to Detective Tsukachi, she's moved a few times. To an apartment around the time we sent out acceptance letters. She wasn't there long, however. One of the nurses she works with said she started staying with her about a month after renting the place. Shuta's eyes briefly widen, covering her tracks? Nizu nods. That's what the detective thought as well. When he asked the nurse if she knew where Midoriya was now, she told him that Midoriya put her 2 weeks in at the hospital but didn't stay the whole time. Left about a week ago to join her husband in America. Shoyuta sits up straight at that, his hands clenching in front of him. She's out of our jurisdiction? So, it seems. Twitching Shoyuta all but glares at his boss. Explain. Nizu can't help but cackle in sadistic glee. From what I have pieced together about Mrs. Midoriya, she'll return. She may not want to claim her son as such nor want him to be a hero, but even she won't be able to pass up the opportunity to try and lay claim to him as he continues his classes. I don't want him to have to go back to her. Nizu shakes his head. Oh no. I agree with that. Even if she does return, I expect he won't have to. Due to child abandonment and the evidence that is against her, all her rights as a parent have been removed. Once our kind detective finishes up with the paperwork on his end, Izuku Midoriya will be a ward of UA. Shoyuta nods. We'll need to make sure that she isn't allowed access to the hospital or UA when he comes back. Already done. Now, I've sent you the meeting information and some specific things I want you to look for while you're there. Have a good evening, Aizawa. Nizu doesn't bother waiting for a response before he ends the call. Shoyuta walks back into the living room after his call, an eyebrow arched as he takes in the scene in front of him. Hisashi is dancing almost desperately in time with the game, his attention unwavering even as his hair falls into his face. Eri, however, has made her way to the sofa and has fallen asleep on her stomach, an arm hanging over the edge of the couch with her head looking like it's about to follow. Hitoshi, however, is sitting in a corner near the cat tree with the journal in his hands. Eyes widening as he notices his dad watching them. I just went back to read the passage that you and Pops read that Eri and I missed. Shoyuta tilts his head up just slightly as he watches his son. I didn't ask. Yeah, I know. Hitoshi rubs the back of his head nervously before looking away. Shoyuta just watches his kid for a moment before a twisted grin starts to spread across his face. What was the passage about? What was the passage about? Hitoshi coughs and glances at the journal, wondering if he could get away with going back to that specific passage, but as soon as the thought comes, he immediately dismisses it because he knows that his dad would notice. Shoyuta nods in response, refusing to repeat himself even to his own child. Oh, forget it. I read the whole thing. Happy? Hitoshi reaches over to pet a cat, turning so he can hide the light pink starting to dust his cheeks. Grinning to himself, Shoyuta looks from his son to his husband before looking back to Hitoshi. What's that about? Hitoshi looks back at his dad, a Cheshire grin quickly spreading across his face. Eri got the high score, and Pops has been trying to beat her score since. Looking over at Eri, he shakes his head. Eri got tired of waiting. Shoyuta nods as he walks over to Hisashi, placing a hand on the desperately dancing man's shoulder. Give it up, Zashi. You've been dethroned. Hisashi squawks in surprise at the touch before his eyes narrow at his husband, the words slowly sinking in. I refuse to be dethroned. You can't refuse something that's already happened. According to Hitoshi, this has been going on long enough that it put Eri to sleep. Shoyuta motions to the sleeping girl on the couch. Hisashi looks over at Eri, a smile spreading across his entire face. She is a cute little ruler, isn't she? Hitoshi lets out an amused huff as he gets up. He then takes a moment to stretch before walking over to his dad, handing the dark-haired man the journal before he heads to the kitchen. Shoyuta turns away from his husband as he's handed the journal, a small grin playing at his lips as he watches his kid walk away. Make me a cup while you're at it. Yeah, I hear you. Song lyrics. Eri looked up at Hisashi, spoon still hanging out of her mouth as she finishes her breakfast. Papa. Setting his own spoon down, bite not taken, Hisashi turns his attention to his daughter with an encouraging smile. Yes, baby bear? Eri fidgets in her seat for a moment before nodding her head, her determination set. Will you take me to go see Deku today? Hisashi isn't even surprised. It's been a few days since they've went to see her hero, so he knew that this would be coming soon. Are you sure you're up to it? Eri taps her spoon against her chin in thought before nodding. Yeah, I'm good. But I need to do something by myself. Just Deku and I, is that okay? Now that does surprise him. He knows she wasn't comfortable at the hospital the last time, even though she stated that seeing Izuku was fine because he just looked like he was sleeping, she still wasn't comfortable. So, What could possibly make his daughter want to be by herself in the room with Izuku? Can you tell me what you are needing to do first? Eri shakes her head rapidly. Sorry Papa, but this is a Deku and I thing. I think he needs this like he always knew when I did. Hizashi studies his little girl for a moment. Seeing the absolute truth in her eyes, he gives her a bright smile. We'll have to make sure it's all right with the nurses, but if they agree then so do I. He watches as red eyes widen in surprise before Eri is jumping up out of her chair and attaching herself to him in a tight hug. Thank you. I'll go get ready. His little girl untangles herself from him before he can even move to hug her in response, but as she pulls away, he catches the smile that adorns her face, and that's honestly all he needs. If this is something that will make his daughter happy enough to smile, then that's all the encouragement he needs to go along with whatever she has planned. Shoyuta walks into the dining room holding a cup of coffee at the same time that Eri turns away from Hizashi to run. It takes all of his skills as an underground hero to keep from wearing his coffee this morning, and even then he just barely succeeds. Sorry Dad. Eri calls out as she carries on her way down the hall. Letting out a grunt in reply, he moves so he's next to his husband. Once there, he sets his coffee down on the table before taking his own seat as his eyes slide shut. It's far too early for this. Hizashi lets out a bark of laughter as he watches the scene play out, quieting down as the dark-haired man sits beside him. You alright, Sho? Shoyuta turns his tired gaze to the other man. He stares for just a moment before slowly blinking as he gives a drawn-out groan in response. Yes, I know it's too early. Drink your coffee, babe. Hizashi smiles at his hopelessly tired partner before turning his attention back to his own cup of coffee and breakfast. A few minutes later has Hizashi watching the everyday scene unfold. Hitoshi stumbles into the dining room still in his pajamas and hair in complete disarray. After barely managing to pull a chair out, he takes a seat, letting his head fall to the table with a solid thump. Shoyuta stares blankly at his son over his half-finished cup of coffee for a moment before blindly reaching for the cup in front of Hizashi. Pulling the cup to him, Shoyuta adjusts his hold so it's on the mug itself before he pushes it against his perpetually tired son's shoulder. Hitoshi lifts his head to blink blearily up at his dad. Noticing the mug, he carefully takes it in his hands before taking a sip of the delicious dark brew. Hizashi just smiles as he gets up to get a new cup of coffee. Zashi, where's Eri? Shoyuta, now awake enough, asks the blonde when he walks back into the dining room. Hizashi takes a quick sip of his coffee as he reclaims his previous spot. She should be finishing up getting ready. She wants me to take her to see the little listener today. Shuta's eyes widen slightly before narrowing. Is she really all right for that? She said she is, told me that she had something she needed to do, and I'm inclined to believe her. Hizashi flashes his husband an encouraging smile, knowing that it's probably bothering him that their daughter asked him instead to take her. Shoyuta stares into his mug for a moment, a slight frown tugging at his lips. Nizu wants me to go over some information about Aldera before my visit tomorrow. But I can always do that later. Hizashi shakes his head as he leans over, pressing a kiss to the top of his husband's hair. I've got this, babe. You focus on the case, all right? Take Hitoshi with you. Hitoshi looks up as he hears his name. What about me? Shoyuta snorts in amusement. Zashi says you're with me today, kid. Hitoshi blinks slowly before nodding. Yeah? Okay. Cool. A little while later has Eri and Hizashi standing at the front desk of the hero ward waiting as the receptionist looks through Izuku's file. Name, please. The man glances up at Hizashi, an eyebrow raised in question. Hizashi Yamada, also known as. Hizashi pulls out his hero license and shows it to the other man. Pro hero present, Mike. The receptionist looks over the license, then over the file before nodding. You're on the list, so you're welcome to visit. Thank you. Can I see Izuku's approved list to see if it needs to be amended as his is an ongoing case? Of course, sir. The receptionist takes a moment to get a clipboard as well as a pen, which he hands over along with a paper copy of Izuku's approved list to Hizashi. Glancing over the paper, Hizashi can't help but be a bit surprised as well as angry by what he doesn't see on the list. Shoyuta Aizawa, Hizashi Yamada, Namuri Kiyama, Naomasa Tsukachi, Ryo Inui, Mirio Togata. I'm sorry to ask, But what if one of his friends wished to visit? Hizashi takes a deep breath trying to keep his smile on his face, so Eri doesn't catch on to the fact that he's not happy. As long as they are accompanied with one of the listed adults, then it's completely fine. Hizashi nods, then hands everything back to the receptionist. Looks good for now, thank you. He grabs Eri's hand and leads her to Izuku's room, pausing outside his door. You sure about this, baby bear? He kneels down in front of her so he can see the truth in her eyes. Eri nods with a small nervous smile. I'm sure, I have to do this, Papa. Hizashi studies her eyes for a moment before standing up with a smile. All right then, but you will only have a few minutes. I don't want either of us to get in trouble, okay? Quickly entering his hero code on the pin pad, he lets Eri into the room. Eri nods as she goes into the room. Walking over to the bed, she hesitates for a moment before quietly climbing up into the chair that's beside the bed. Hi Deku. It's me, Eri. I don't know what's going on, but we're learning about what you went through in your journal, and it made me think about how sad you must have been. I'm sorry that you were always helping me when I was sad, but no one helped you. Reaching a hand out hesitantly, she traces small fingers over the bandages on his arms. When you wake up, I promise that I'll help you too. That's why I needed to visit today. It made me think about what you do when I'm sad, and so I convinced Papa to bring me here. I hope that's all right. Looking at the monitors around Izuku, she lets a small frown settle on her face as she carefully moves her hand to grasp one of his own. You with the sad eyes. Don't be discouraged. I realize. As she starts to sing, Eri grips his hand tighter in her own as a few tears start to fall down her cheeks. It's hard to take courage. In a world full of people, you can lose sight of it all. The darkness inside you can make you feel so small. Eri slowly climbs up into the bed, careful of the tubes attached to her hero as she does. Small hands clutching tight to Izuku as she continues to quietly sing to him. Hizashi opens the door as quietly as possible before walking in. As soon as he's in the room, though, he regrets this whole thing. Because it's heartbreaking. There on the bed is his little girl with her forehead pressed to her hero's forehead, and she's crying. Tears streaming down her cheeks as she sings. He doesn't know what to do with the information that his daughter sings either, and he knows now is not the time to address it. Not as he hears. Can't remember when I last saw you laughing. If this world makes you crazy, and you've taken all you can bear, just call me up, 'cause I will always be there. Taking a deep breath, Hizashi walks further into the room as quietly as possible so not to disturb the other occupants. Just before he reaches the bed, he stills for a moment as Eri finishes singing, then lifting a boot to drop down on the floor, exaggerating the step so as to announce his presence. Baby bear. He looks at the trembling form of his daughter, concern clearly showing on his face as he reaches out to gently touch her shoulder. Eri turns and launches herself at Hizashi, her arms wrapping around his shoulders as she cries. Hizashi doesn't even stumble as he catches her, long arms wrapping around her small frame, trying to offer her all the support she needs. But, didn't he? Eri struggles with her words as they come out between broken sobs. Hizashi rubs Eri's back, humming softly, just giving her all the time she needs to get herself pulled together again. After a few minutes, Eri sniffles as she pulls back just slightly to look at her papa. Why didn't he trust me? I could have helped him. Hizashi places a hand on the back of Eri's head and presses her into his shoulder gently. I don't know, baby bear, but he's getting help now, all right? You did so good today. I'm so proud of you. Eri nuzzles into Hizashi's neck as she tightens her arms around him in a hug. Papa, can we go home? Of course, baby, let's go home. He lets a sad smile settle on his face as he carries his little girl out of the room. Journal entry. Arriving home just before lunch, Hizashi watches as Eri makes her way to the kitchen for something to eat. Shaking his head, he walks over to where Shoyuta sits at the dining room table with his laptop. How was it? Leaning forward, Hizashi rests his chin on his husband's head. It was rough. She sang to him. It was heartbreaking. Then she asked why he didn't trust her. His voice wobbles slightly as his emotions get the best of him. Shoyuta slowly stands up so he doesn't have the blonde accidentally hurting himself. Once standing, he pulls his husband into his arms, offering him silent support. while placing a gentle kiss to his forehead. Hizashi lays his head on Shuta's shoulder as he tries to keep from crying. That's the big question, isn't it? Why didn't Izuku trust any of us? I didn't trust right away when you and Dad took me in. Hitoshi walks in, coffee in one hand, the journal and a half-eaten sandwich in the other. Hizashi looks over at his son, his gaze landing on the sandwich in his hand questioningly because he knows his son and husband well enough that they don't just make themselves food. Shoyuta drinking jelly packets was proof of that enough. Hitoshi shrugs. Eri is making herself lunch and said I needed to eat a sandwich and handed me hers. I couldn't say no at that point. I'm not a monster. Shoyuta rolls his eyes as he lets go of Hizashi to reclaim his seat. Don't bite the journal by mistake. Hitoshi's cheeks gain a small flush of pink at the comment, indicating that it's too late for that warning. A few minutes later finds Eri running into the dining room, carrying a plate of sandwiches which she hands out. One to Hizashi and one to Shoyuta, then keeping one for herself. Toshi, since you're done you read while we eat. Dad, Papa, it's peanut butter and apple jelly. She takes a seat and immediately starts to eat her sandwich, her eyes never leaving her brother's however as she waits for him to start. Hitoshi sighs and flips through the notebook before starting the painstaking task he was charged with. Reading out loud. It started again. I should have expected it. I was getting too comfortable. I know the rules. Head down, stay silent, don't get in the way. So why didn't I follow them? Now it started again. I was in the way. Or too loud. That's why Monoma hit me in the head with his tray. I forgot to follow the rules. Hizashi pauses in taking a bite of his sandwich, a frown tugging at his lips as he hears how panicked the little listener's words come across even from his tired son's monotone reading. I didn't realize that some of the 1B kids moved from just verbal taunting to physical. Shoyuta sighs as he looks down at his sandwich like it was the cause of this whole mess. Some teacher I am. You're a great teacher, Dad. But you're also human and humans make mistakes. Hitoshi gives his dad a small grin before he continues to read. Final exams. What a disaster. I was partnered with Kaken again and we were paired to go after All Might. That was a complete and utter mess. IT started out with Kaken and I disagreeing on how to pass the exam. It escalated from there. He hit me with his gauntlets before the match and yelled at me. So I yelled back. What was I thinking? Then All Might attacked and we still couldn't work together. I got a guardrail shoved on me, pinning me down, while All Might fought with Kaken. We ended up working together though. Kaken let me use one of his gauntlets so that there was space between us and All Might. It felt like my shoulder got ripped out of socket. Is that what Kaken feels every time he uses them? I'm not sure how I feel about Kaken throwing me towards the escape gate with an explosion like I was the ball during Aizawa-sensei's assessment test. But I know that All Might smashing into my back was excruciating, especially on impact with the ground. But I still had to get up. I had to save Kaken, get us to the exit so we could pass. We did, thankfully. Note, it's been a few days since then and recovery girl healing those of us who needed it after the exam, but I am still having trouble with my lower back. Not that it matters. There's so much there that needs to be unpacked and Hitoshi knows it. Knows that he has to wait, otherwise his family and himself will not be able to process what they have just learned. After a moment he can't stay quiet any longer. Instead he looks up at his parents. Why did he still want to be a hero after literally everyone failed him? Shoyuta freezes because honestly how can he answer that? Answer the question that hits him like a ton of bricks, easily knocking the wind out of him. Gathering his thoughts he gives the only answer that he can. Some people are just born to be heroes. Izuku is one of them. Aizawa is mad at me. I broke my bones to save and protect Kota. But he gave me that disappointed look with a sigh. I wasn't trying to break my limbs. We were just up against muscular. That, and I was the only one who knew where Kota's hiding place was at, and I wasn't going to let him get hurt. Besides, this was all my fault. It's all because of this quirk that the class is targeted, and on top of that, if I injure my arm again, I might lose it. Deku could lose his arm? Eri tilts her head to the side, confused, worry shining brightly in her eyes. I guess so, princess. That wasn't something I was informed of, however. I understood his reasoning for why he was so badly injured. However, in hindsight, I did snap at him. I was worried and I showed it in the form of snapping because of him being reckless. Letting out a sigh, Shoyuta slouched down in his chair. Hizashi reached over, giving Shuta's shoulder a gentle squeeze of reassurance as he gave a nod to Hitoshi to continue reading. All Might defeated All for One. He's not dead, but he is in custody and going to Tartarus. The League got away, however, so we still have to be on our guard. All Might won't be able to fight anymore. His power left him while he was fighting AFO. It's now my job to become the next symbol of peace, and I don't want to. I don't want everyone to only rely on me. Because there will be times when I fail. It's being human. I want to be able to rely on my classmates and other heroes, and isn't that terrifying? That's if I decide to be a hero at all now. Because I have to decide if pursuing my dream is worth the chance of becoming paralyzed before I'm even out of high school with All Might as a teacher. Because my back is still bothering me, and as I was reminded, this isn't my quirk. It's still highest. Hitoshi stops reading, throwing the journal across the table at parents. I'm done reading. After reading all of Izuku's journal so far, All Might is a sheet hero, and obviously even worse as a teacher, who almost paralyzes a child for a DMN test. Language, Hitoshi. Shoyuta says half-heartedly because he agrees with his kid's sentiment, just not the execution. Hizashi can't help but frown. The little listener was learning to trust and rely on people, just in time for All Might to smack him back down. He shakes his head as he picks up the journal, figuring it's his turn since he hasn't read yet. How do I get out of this mess? Aizawa and All Might are going to be coming around for the dorm system. They need Inko's permission. I mean, I'm grateful for the dorm system as the apartment is only paid up for another 2 weeks, so this is actually great timing. I can handle a short time on the streets. Worst case scenario, I get out of everyone's hair by being killed. Actually, maybe that's the best case scenario. But Inko? I haven't talked to her since the start of school. This is such a mess. That's never the best, Deku. You're my hero. I wouldn't want you to be killed. Eri cries out indignantly, hurt that her hero has such little regard for himself, and that people caused this. People who were supposed to care about him and love him. It made her so mad. He gave her so much by saving her. Things that he apparently never had himself. All Might came by himself to talk about the dorms. I was able to tell him that Mom and I already agreed to let me go. I forged her signatures on some papers that I came up with for our agreement that said she gave written permission for me to move into the dorms as well as allowing me to sign for myself since she has to work all the time. With those, All Might let me sign for myself with no problem. Aizawa never would have let me get away with any of that. Hizashi looks over at his husband as the man lets out a tired groan. I never should have let that buffoon convince me to split up. It was logical so that we could get them all done in a decent amount of time. But I should have went to Izuku's at minimum. I knew that All Might always had a special interest in him. That he was biased. Hitoshi lets out a snort of amusement. You didn't know how bad his ignorance was, Dad. No, but thinking anything else was illogical. Shoyuta runs his hands down his face before nodding to Hizashi to continue. Hizashi frowns as he does a quick skim of the page, then looks back up at Shoyuta. I think that it's best we continue this when we head to bed for the night. Is it bad, Papa? Eri looks up at Hizashi, tears already starting as she imagines just what could have them stop reading. Hizashi gets up and wraps his arms around Eri with a soft smile. Yeah, baby bear, it is. But it's not so much him being hurt as we get to see how his mind was so unhappy, and I don't want you to see that, okay? Eri nods hesitantly as she hugs her papa in return. Journal entry. Journal thoughts. Later that night, Hizashi walks into his and Shuta's room with the journal and looks at his husband who is sitting on the bed, papers in hand. Ready, Panther? Shoyuta looks up from the paper he's grading, then down at his pile, seeing that he's on the last one. Finishing it up real quick, he sets the papers on his night table. Not really, but it needs to be done. Hizashi moves to sit in the bed and snuggles up to the other man while opening the journal. There's still a week left till the dorm system is ready and we can move in, but I had to leave the apartment a few days ago. So I am officially homeless. I moved all my notebooks to the school and locked them in my locker so they are safer than being with me. I've learned a lot already through this and searching on my phone. Like I can go to a cafe to do homework, and as long as I order something, then I can stay long enough to charge my phone. Also, some stores give free samples of food which isn't very filling, but it's something different than ramen. Also, instant ramen is cheap. I can go to the park and fill the cup with the water and just let it set for a bit and it turns out fine. It's not hot, but it's food. Showering seems to be one of the hardest, but it's still not so bad. Most gas stations have a public restroom, and since I go daily to buy ramen and a drink so I don't have to carry anything extra, I just wash off using a washcloth that I made sure to pack from home, and since we shower after heroics class it's all fine. Laundry so far has been the hardest. I can only carry 2 uniforms and an extra set of clothes with me, plus what I wear. But I have 2 extra sets of clothes in my gym locker at school so that I can switch them out. That leaves me with laundry day being Saturday at the laundromat and washing the uniform in a bucket when I get out of school and immediately change. That way by the day after next it should be mostly if not all the way dry in time for me to go to school. Also, I found an abandoned building to sleep in, so I'm safe again. Hizashi stops reading, taking a breath as he looks up at the ceiling, his emotions getting the best of him as tears well in his eyes silently. He was trying so hard to convince himself that he was happy, that everything was okay when it really wasn't. The poor little listener. Shoyuta reaches over, taking the journal from his husband, not wanting to deal with the fact that one of his students thought that staying in an abandoned building was safe. A worthless, quirkless wonder like you. That's what Kaken said when he wanted to talk outside after curfew. I tried to explain that the license exam, I don't think it judges our actual abilities. Gutter trash. He's mad about Kamino, mad that All Might took an interest in me. He wouldn't listen when I said we shouldn't fight, that we could spar in a training room, that we can't do this. I had to use my quirk to dodge and for self-defense. But when he was blaming himself for All Might losing his power, I knew I had to fight to give him that outlet, because I know what it's like to let the negativity in your mind slowly devour you. Aizawa-sensei was mad but just sent us to Recovery Girl, told us not to rely on her quirk. Funny seeing as since starting you. I've already had 2 surgeries because she refuses to treat me. Even though her and Nedzu know why I had no control. Shoyuta glares as he activates his quirk just in time to keep his loud husband from using his quirk. Are you done, Hizashi? After a moment Hizashi nods to the red-eyed man, waiting for his quirk to return before smiling sadly at his husband. Sorry Sho, but the little listener has had 2 surgeries while at U.A? Even though apparently Recovery Girl knew what was going on. Shoyuta huffs at his husband even though he gives a nod of agreement. Nedzu can deal with that. Things Night Eye said to me. How can you contribute to society? In what way does your presence benefit others? By dying. My presence doesn't. I know that I'm a worthless Deku. As I thought, One for All should have gone to Mirio. You're right, Mirio would have been much better suited to All Might's quirk. The more I see, the more I fail to understand why it had to be you. I don't know why it was me. I honestly don't think All Might even knows why me anymore. I'm nothing but a problem, and that's all I have ever been. Nobody, nothing, invisible. I don't deserve to exist. You will gain the experience in this pro-hero office that will make you very aware of who is best suited to that power. I already know that I'm not suited to this power. I've felt the blowback of how this quirk is too strong for my body, how it's likely to kill me if I don't do it myself. I know all of this, because I feel it. I feel it slowly tearing me apart inside, like it's a beast locked inside of a cage trying to get out. Those are all things that Night Eye said before. Agreeing to accept me as a work study. Even then he only accepted me in the hopes of making me give up One for All. What kind of hero says that to a child? He could have just declined the work study. Hizashi tugs one of his pillows into his lap and squeezes it tight, trying desperately to quietly release some of his anger while tears run down his cheeks. Shoyuta lets out a heavy breath as he gets hit again by just how much he utterly failed one of his students. It takes a good few minutes for him to gain enough composure to continue reading. I can't get her out of my head. Her frightened tear-filled red eyes. Everything feels so muddled, like I'm drowning. It's like the sludge villain all over again. I must be slipping in class as well because Aizawa-sensei, he would remove me from work studies if I didn't keep up on my schoolwork. How can I do better when I can't focus? When I'm drowning and all I hear is Eri's small broken voice begging for help. When I just found out that All Might is going to die this year or next. Shoyuta stops and looks over at his husband, giving a small nod of his head in understanding. This is why you wanted us to read it alone now. Hizashi nods. I didn't want Eri to get upset at the reminder of what happened. Not only that, but we don't know how his mind was while the rescue was happening. Human cells and blood. Turning his own daughter's body into bullets. Your kids had just rescued the girl. If she's even still alive. Ending your work studies. Haven't earned my trust. Problem child. I should have rescued her. I know I should have. What kind of hero abandons a frightened child when they are clinging to you while begging you to not let go? I had to leave her to be tortured by her father. She may not even be alive now, and it would be all my fault. Aizawa-sensei has every right to end my work studies. He can't trust me, I can't trust him. Hell, I can't even trust myself. I'd give anything to switch places so that Eri was safe. Shoyuta closes the journal, then moves to set it aside before closing his eyes. Apparently it wasn't very good. No, apparently it wasn't. I know this is hard on you, but I'm so proud of you, Sho. Hizashi leans against his husband, trying to get comfortable. We still have a few more pages. Depending on how the meeting goes tomorrow, we could possibly finish it up then. As for proud. Hizashi, he wouldn't be in a coma if I had paid more attention. This is my fault. Shaking his head, Hizashi reaches up and tugs one of Shuta's hands into his, carefully intertwining their fingers together. This isn't your fault. It seems to me a lot of mistakes were made. But you're right. If it wasn't for you, he wouldn't be in a coma. He would probably be dead. Shoyuta brings their hands up to place a gentle kiss to the back of Hizashi's hand, then gives a small sigh in response. Arguing is illogical. Just go to sleep, Zashi. Journal entry. Journal thoughts. Shoyuta hated going into things unprepared, but he didn't have much of a choice this time. Hizashi had apparently decided to hide the journal while he was out on patrol. So now here he is standing in front of Aldra Junior High School, wishing that he could have finished the journal in case there was something that could have prepared him for today. Aha! A loud honk comes from his right, causing Shoyuta to turn just slightly. He's never been more grateful in his life that he left his cockatoo of a husband at home. Because just looking at the short, portly man he knows today is going to give him a headache. The short man approaches rather quickly considering the distance between them, and it's easy to tell he has some kind of a mutation quirk. Blonde hair cut into a bowl shape with big bushy red eyebrows, skin more of a light pink, and the man's nose. It's abnormally large and bulbous. You must be the representative from Yuta that Nedzu was sending over? Aizawa, correct. Shoyuta tips his head forward just the slightest amount in a nod. Yes, and you are? The man chuckles, and unfortunately as he does, loud obnoxious honks escape him. I'm the principal of this fine establishment. Principal Jichi. Shoyuta looks back at the school, noting the cracks in the walls, how there seems to be plants growing in the gutters, and gives it an unimpressed look. Let's just get this over with, shall we? I'm sure you have plenty to do as a principal with students returning tomorrow, and Nedzu would appreciate the opportunity to see if there was any students who slipped through the cracks before our own students return as well. Jichi nods in agreement as he heads towards his school. Completely understandable. Right this way. Shoyuta follows silently behind the other man. I must admit I was rather surprised when Nedzu himself reached out to me regarding possibly recruiting a few students that may have slipped through the cracks. Well, I couldn't say no. He mentioned how it could be beneficial to have a steady stream of students come from a single school. Apparently schools can get recognition as well as funding for things like that. Jichi seems oblivious to the fact that Shoyuta hasn't said a word on their walk to his office. Shoyuta rolls his eyes behind Jichi's back as they finally make it to the principal's office. He's right, you must be proud. Oh yes. Seeing Bakugo take first place during the sports festival was a highlight for all of us here. Blinking slowly, Shoyuta turned to watch the man as he went about pulling out a few files from a filing cabinet in the corner of the room. I know the feeling. Bakugo is in my class, so I was quite proud of him. Jichi places the folders down on top of a gray plastic tote that sits on his desk while flashing Shoyuta a smile, as if the compliment towards Bakugo was a direct compliment to the man himself. I figured Nedzu wouldn't mind, so I included a few of the student files for a couple of our second and third year students. Shoyuta nods as he walks over, picking up the files and placing them inside the tote. I'll let him know. Thank you for your time. Jichi moves to open the door, following Shoyuta out. Of course, please let us know if there is anything else that we can do for you all at UA. Shoyuta gives a nod before carrying the tote with him to the car he borrowed from Hizashi. After dropping the tote off with Nedzu and having the customary tea, Shoyuta finally made it home. Immediately he heads to his room and flops down unceremoniously onto the bed. Long morning, babe? Shoyuta glances over at the blonde man getting dressed. In his hero costume, a frown on his face. The principal is an obnoxious oaf. He seems more concerned about recognition than anything else. He doesn't even seem to remember Izuku. Hizashi flips his head upside down and brushes his hair. Unfortunately, that may be the reason he's so willing to just give over the footage. Think about it, if he actually remembered the little listener, then he probably wouldn't have been as forthcoming with the security footage. Shoyuta nods in agreement. That's true. Now where's the journal? Hizashi grabs the journal off the dresser and tosses it to his husband. Here you go, read it out loud while I get ready though. Nem wanted to spend time with Eri and Hitoshi today before break ended, so we don't have to worry about them overhearing. Shoyuta nods and flips through the journal till he gets to where they last left off. I had to leave her behind. This little girl who had such sad apple red eyes and bandages covering her arms and legs. She clung to me crying, begging me not to go, to help her. Yet instead, I had to leave her. I had to abandon a frightened and injured child. That's not being a hero. Shoyuta reaches over, absent-mindedly petting the cat in the bed, not bothering to look and see which one has decided to join him. The movement just acting as a balm to his guilt-ridden heart. I can't get her out of my head. Her frightened, tear-filled eyes, her soft broken plea for help. Everything feels so muddled, like I'm drowning again. It's the sludge villain all over again. I must be starting to slip in my classwork as well, because Aizawa said he would remove me from work studies. How can I do better when I can't focus? When I feel like I'm drowning, and all I hear is Eri's voice begging for help. Asking me why I left her? Why I didn't save her? Hizashi slows his movements of getting ready. Tears starting to pool in his eyes at the idea of one of their students suffering so much on their own. Human cells and blood. Overhaul, he takes these from someone living. The bandages. Oh no. Prairie. Turning his own daughter's body into bullets. What have I done? How can I even claim to be a hero? He's using his own daughter to make these bullets, and I just left her there. Your kids had just rescued the girl. I know. I had her in my arms, I had her head pressed into my shoulder. I didn't want her to see any possible fight, but ultimately I let her go. If she's even still alive. Please. Eri, you have to be alive. I'll happily trade anything. I'll even take your place. I don't mind at all. You just have to be safe. Please. I'm so sorry I didn't save you. Did they really say that? Hizashi's voice breaks as he turns his full attention to the dark-haired man, his eyes begging for it to be some kind of cruel joke. Shoyuta glances over at the blonde, a frown tugging at his lips as he opens his arms for his partner. I'm sorry, Zashi. Hizashi takes a few long strides till he's in front of his husband and just collapses in the other man's arms, tapping his fingers against the journal after a few moments. Taking the hint, Shoyuta continues to read with one arm wrapped around Hizashi's waist. We saved her. We were able to save Eri. However, she's not doing so hot. She's been running a fever and she's currently in isolation, but still she's alright. We saved her. We did lose someone though, and that was Sir Night-Eye. He didn't make it and Mirio lost his quirk. I offered Mirio one for all. I know that's what Night-Eye would have wanted, plus I already know the pain of being quirkless. I don't want Mirio to have to experience that. But Mirio said no. He was holding out hope that he would get his own back because he didn't want me upset about not having a quirk. I think Mirio may be the only person who's ever been concerned about my feelings before. Hisashi pushes himself up and out of Shuta's arms, shaking his head. Nope, sorry Sho. I can't do any more. You can keep reading if you like, but I can't. I refuse to become all red and splotchy from sobbing my heart out right before patrol. I love you but no. Leaning down, he places a gentle kiss to Shuta's lips before turning on his heel to finish getting ready. Shoyuta snorts in amusement at the dramatic antics before setting the journal aside as he glances at his napping cat. Maybe she had the right idea and it was nap time. It had been a long morning so far, and Hisashi had said that he could continue reading later. With that thought in mind, Shoyuta took the cat's lead and dozed off into a restless slumber. Journal entry. Waking up from his nap, Shoyuta glances around, noting that the house is completely quiet, meaning that his kids were still out and Hisashi was still at work. That means he doesn't have to get up, that he can stay in bed and relax. Or he can go visit his kid. Decision made, Shoyuta starts to untangle himself from the blanket that he has somehow gotten himself trapped in. After successfully getting himself free, he takes a moment to straighten his clothes from his meeting that morning, so they don't look so sleep-ruffled. Leaving the room, he paused for just a moment to grab the journal before heading out the door. Arriving at the hospital a bit later, Shoyuta goes through all the steps to get into the now familiar hospital room and immediately moves to sit in a chair next to the bed. Hey kiddo, mind if I sit and keep you company for a bit? I'm just going to be doing some reading. Getting comfortable, Shoyuta leans the journal against Izuku so that he can have a hand free, which he promptly uses to hold Izuku's hand as he starts to read quietly. We went to Sir Naitai's funeral today and I'm honestly struggling. I didn't get to prove to him that I'm worthy of All Might's quirk. That he didn't make a mistake taking me on for work studies. I didn't get to tell him I'm sorry for not being good enough to protect Eri. To help Mirio. To save him. Most importantly, I didn't get to tell him he was right. Shoyuta glances over at the kid laying in front of him, a frown marring his features. He wasn't right, kid. Sir Night-Eye should never have treated you the way that he did. I'm sorry that he never got to realize how much of a hero you already are. The one to notice my struggling was Aoyama. Can you believe it? Apparently the doctors told him when he was younger that his body is ill-suited for his quirk. So he didn't want me to face my pain alone since it's obvious that we share that same struggle. He's going to be a great hero someday. Too bad I probably won't be around to see it. Shoyuta groans. At the implications of that. Letting go of Izuku's hand, he pulls out his phone and sends off a message to Nedzu asking if he knew about the situation with Aoyama. While I appreciate the fact that you had at least someone to confide in, I can't condone the fact that no one told me that Aoyama's body was ill-suited to his quirk. Eri wanted to see me today, so I got to tell her my name. Well, the name I'm used to. We even found out that she likes apples. She tried to smile for us but ended up just apologizing because she says she's not good at smiling. We haven't really saved her, have we? Because as long as she can't smile or have fun, then she's not really been saved. She's made a lot of progress, kid. Says most of it is thanks to you. She misses you. So if for no other reason, you need to at least wake up for Eri. All Might is having me work in the forest on long-ranged attacks. Told me again that no one can know. All these secrets are taking their toll on me. I didn't realize this was going to be so hard. That even as a hero I wouldn't be able to rely on fellow heroes. My back still gives me trouble from final exams, I have chronic pain in my hands, and ever since Kaken and I fought after the license exam I can't hear very well on my right side. All I have ever wanted was to be a hero. But is it actually worth it? Shoyuta clenches the railing of the hospital bed, eyes flashing red in his anger. Why couldn't you just trust me? I get it that you never had reason to trust anyone else, but didn't I show that I cared during the USJ? I would have helped you with the pain. Gotten something to help you here. I don't know what was needed, but I would do it. You deserve to be a hero, you have so much potential. Haunted. My quirk is haunted. I can see the past users in my mind like they summon me. I can hear them, see scenes from their past. I can't speak, however, and from my nose down I feel nothing at all. Also, I only have one hand. All Might told me the vestiges can't interfere or influence me, but the first, he talked to me. He touched my hand. It ended with the predecessors staring back at me. Shoyuta glanced over at the green net in the bed while shaking his head. Really, kid? A haunted quirk. He watches the kid for a few, looking for any signs of movement from the boy, a frown tugging at his features. This whole thing clearly weighing on him. I can't control it. It hurts. It's exploding out of me. Stop it, please. I don't want to hurt anyone. Uraraka. Shinso, they saved me. I even got to see the vestiges again. The one I saw when Shinso brainwashed me. He said that the tendrils are called Black Whip. That it was his quirk. That his quirk and the other predecessors' quirk factors mixed into the core of One for All, and they all have been growing stronger than they were before. He told me that controlling my heart is important. That I'm going to end up getting 6 more quirks. How am I going to explain that? Shoyuta drops his head against the bed rail, letting out a soft groan. It's all right, kid. 6 more quirks? We'll work through that together, all right? From what I've read, each time that Shinso has brainwashed you, you have gotten to see the previous users of One for All, so we can get him to help as well. You won't have to go through this alone. Eri still hates her quirk. I think it's just that she hates what can happen, so she's afraid. I understand that completely. Not knowing what will happen, like when Black Whip manifested, and knowing that there are still more to manifest. To be fair, I understand a lot about her. I know she hates her scars, so I showed her mine. She asked about each one and I told her about them, so she knew that she wasn't alone. It was hard, but she deserves to know that she's not alone, even in that. I know she has nightmares still and that she sometimes thinks she's just not worth it. I told her that her feelings matter and that if she is feeling that way, to tell someone. That those close to her truly care about her and think she's worth far more than she thinks of herself. That everyone has feelings like that at times, and it's alright. But she should never have to go through it alone. Even with as much as you were suffering, you still were looking out for Eri. I'm sorry that I failed to notice. If you still choose to be a hero in the future, kid, I will support you. The correct way this time, giving you the attention you need. If you choose not to, well then no matter what, I'll be here for you, kid. They let us all go home for the holidays, and even though I have nowhere to go, I'm really glad. I'm so tired of smiling. Tired of pretending everything is okay. I'm just so very tired. I think this will be my last entry. I just can't keep doing this anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything is alright, smiling and helping people who don't even notice that they're not the only ones breaking. I'm tired of no one ever caring about me even just a little. So, goodbye, journal. Thanks for helping me fake it. You're the one thing I could always count on. Shoyuta leans back in his chair, moving both hands to gently clasp one of Izuku's between his own. I'm sorry for failing you, and I know you're tired, but I need you to wake up, Izuku, so that we can show you what you've been missing. Letting go of Izuku's hand, he turns back to the journal and nearly drops it. Because there in the journal is Izuku's note, addressed to himself and the other faculty at Yurei, which Shoyuta can't bring himself to read. Not yet. Not with his kids still laying in the hospital. Journal letter. Shoyuta was not having a good day, and it had only just begun. After he had gotten home from the hospital yesterday, he had called Nedzu to let him know that he had finally finished the journal besides for the letter in it, only to be informed that they would go over it while at the staff meeting in the morning. So now here he is, sitting in the conference room with the rest of the faculty that bothered to show up. Nedzu holding the journal in his paws as sits at the head of the table. As some of you know, there has been an unfortunate incident with one of our first-year students. Those of you that are not yet aware, you will be once I read this. The extent of your knowledge depends on what those of us in the know deem to be necessary. Shall I read this, or would you like to do the honors, Aizawa? Shoyuta looks over at his boss and waves a hand dismissively. Excellent. I'll read it then. No interrupting until I'm through. With that warning, Nedzu opens the book to the letter inside. Reading over it quickly to himself, he gives a nod before starting to read aloud. He's careful to use his own experiences as an experiment to empathize with the emotions so clearly written. quickly coming to the realization that for the first time in a long time he's afraid. Afraid that he'll not do this broken child's letter justice. That he won't get the emotions right. Pushing his fear aside, he focuses on his task. Dear Utada staff, what does it mean to be a hero? I used to think that being a hero meant saving everyone with a smile. That it meant keeping people safe to begin with. But over time I have learned that's not actually the case. Being a hero means that saving someone only matters if the media is present. It means having double standards on who you can confide in. It means going behind other people's backs. Never relying on your fellow heroes, and always shouldering everything on your own. I learned that a hero is trained to see the signs of someone in a bad situation. But the moment that they hide most of those signs to try and be treated normally, the person is wrote off as just being a nervous, jumpy kid, or a quiet child, or they're just stupid. So it's no longer a hero's concern. I learned that as soon as it's a child of someone powerful or a prominent family, there's nothing a hero can do. I have learned so much about being a hero these last few months while attending UA. One that would save everyone with a smile. No matter how big or mundane the task, and regardless of the money, glory, or even the hero rankings. But even here at Utada, that's not a realistic dream, is it? Because the most important lessons I have learned while here? Heroes are still adults who can't be trusted, and heroes don't always save people. After all, in a school full of heroes and heroes in training. No one saved me. So now I'm dead. Dead because yet another school nurse refused to treat me. Dead because no one else took the time to save the other students that were slowly fading away, so I did. Dead because no one thought it necessary to have traumatized teenagers go to counseling. Dead due to the negligence of you, the A as a whole. Yet even with that being said, you all are not the actual reason I died. That belongs to two people, and those two people alone. I died because All Might told a quirkless child to be realistic after crushing his dreams of being a hero. Died because he immediately left that same child alone on a rooftop. Did you know the mortality rate of jumping off a 7-story building is 90%? That most of the buildings in Mizudafu stand taller than that? I did. I've known that fact for years now. After all, the only thing realistic for a quirkless child is to either be killed in hate crimes or them killing themselves. I died because that same day Katsuki Bakugo told that same quirkless kid to take a swan dive off the roof. Died because I was constantly paired up with him because we were rivals. Well, we were never rivals. He was my bully and I his constant victim. By the way, thank you for constantly putting me in an abusive situation. That's real hero-like right there. I died because of the constant burns I've received from him since I was 4 years old. The explosions making my skin more scar tissue than anything else. The never-ending verbal abuse. But he's just hot-headed, right? Wrong. Katsuki is no more than a villain. Just like All Might at this point. I'm dead because of them, and honestly, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm dead because I'm so tired of pretending to be happy and help ing people when all they are is conceited, selfish wannabe heroes. I used to think being saved by Stain was an insult. Being told that he wouldn't kill me all because I wanted to protect those that were fallen first was scary. But you know what? From what I've seen and experienced, most of the Hero Corps students and even a lot of the teachers are fake heroes. So yeah, I'm glad I'm dead. Because I'd rather be dead than be a villain, and at this point, I'd rather be a villain than be some fake hero. So thank you for failing me. For never seeing the signs. For every single time that I was paired against my abuser and got no medical treatment but what I could do myself. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you for prioritizing strength over being a decent person. Sincerely, a worthless Deku. P.S. If my class does ask what happened to me, tell them the truth. They deserve to know how weak I am. Plus, I want the ones that I helped to know that even while I was helping them, I was suffering too. Not because I want to hurt them, but they deserve to be able to reflect and see if they could have done anything to change it. They deserve the chance to become better heroes by learning from what happened. Oh, and Mr. Aizawa? Thank you for being the best teacher I have ever had. For being a true hero that's not in it for the fame, glory, anything like that. Just in it to make a difference and help people. Even at the cost of yourself, as we seen at the USJ. Sorry that I wasted so much of your time. I have analysis notebooks in my locker, you can do whatever you want with them. I figured you're the person they'd be safest with. Thanks for letting me dream a little longer. I appreciate it. You made these last few months the best ones of my life. So thank you and please, make sure to take care of Eri. Nezu closes the notebook and looks around the table at his staff, not surprised in the slightest at the varying reactions that he sees. As you all can see, we have lost one of our own. A child that we have all failed not just as heroes, but as teachers as well. I'm sorry, but what? That can't be right. Deku. That's the name of the green-haired kid in 1A, right? He wouldn't do something like this. Vlad frowns, clearly confused because the letter doesn't match what he knows of the kid. Vlad's right. He's such a sunshine child. Heck, his class calls him a cinnamon roll. This can't be real. Midnight rubs her eyes, trying to get the tears to stop falling. And what does he mean not getting treatment? Everyone knows that the injured goes to Chio. Just what he said, Nem. The kid was partially deaf from Bakugo's explosions. His back was still bothering him from All Might's attack during finals. I found him bleeding out in a pile of trash New Year's Eve while I was on patrol. Shoyuta leans forward, tired eyes blazing red as he turns to face Chio. Recovery Girl places her hands on the table in front of her as she looks down, refusing to meet the gazes of her colleagues. He kept injuring himself. I was just trying to give him some tough love where he would be more cautious with his quirk. I never meant that I wouldn't treat any of his wounds. Well, that's exactly how my kid took it. Shoyuta all but snarls. You told a child who has been deprived common decency that you wouldn't help him. Hizashi reaches over and places a hand on Shuta's shoulder. Sho, you have to calm down. I know you're mad, but that's not going to change anything. You need to pull yourself together before we're overrun by the kids coming back. Shoyuta glares at the hand on his shoulder for a moment like all he wants to do is bite it before letting his head fall down onto the table in front of him. All the kids but one, you mean? That's enough of that, Aizawa. I know this isn't a position that anyone wants to be in, but we also have to think about the students that are returning, and I believe that Midoriya was correct in some of his statements. We should have taken it upon ourselves to insist that they all have counseling, especially with everything that your class has gone through already. Inui, I trust that you can go about making a counseling schedule for 1A even if it's just an evaluation to see who needs follow-up sessions, yes? Midnight, Yamada, the two of you will be going through the rest of Class 1A to see who else was missed. Just because Midoriya helped them doesn't mean that they can't relapse, especially if they found out that the kid that helped them is no longer with us. Chio, you and I have a meeting later. Those with assignments or meetings nod their heads in understanding, knowing that their roles are the only thing keeping them from losing another one of their students. Perfect. Now head to your classes before your kids get there, and let's have another great semester. Nezu smiles before walking out of the conference room, letting the teachers go do their own thing. Thus, walking into his classroom, Shoyuta stopped just inside the doorway. Suddenly hit by how hard this was going to be. How he was going to have to look at the now empty desk in his room for an indefinite amount of time. How he was going to have to explain to some degree why it's Midoriya while at school. Explain why he wasn't at school. I won't get to hear the kids muttering anytime soon. And doesn't that hurt to realize? Hitoshi looks up from his desk, blinking tiredly at his dad for a moment before getting up and making his way slowly to the man frozen in place. Placing a grounding hand on Aizawa's shoulder, he is suddenly thankful that none of his new classmates are there yet to witness this interaction. Dad? It's Hitoshi. I need you to breathe. Shoyuta glances at Hitoshi as he blinks back to focus. Thanks, kid. He gives his son a slight nod with the barest of smiles to show his kid that he's proud of him. Then he continues moving to the front of the room to his own seat. Hitoshi watches his dad for a moment more before heading back to his desk, his eyes lingering on the desk that he knows belongs to Izuku. It's not long until lunch when Shuta's struggling starts to boil over. His carefully crafted mask cracking each time he catches one of his students' glance at the empty desk. Luckily, he knows his Hell class well enough to brace himself just in time for one of his students to voice the question he's been hoping to avoid all morning. Mr. Aizawa? Where's Deku? Looking over at Uraraka, he clenches his fists behind his desk to keep his composure. Midoriya required a longer break due to personal reasons and was granted it by Nedzu. Now all of you head to lunch. Shoyuta doesn't wait for his class to leave, instead leaving his class reps in charge as he makes his way to the teacher's lounge. Walking into the lounge, Shoyuta is stopped by the booming voice of the colleague that deemed the morning staff meeting unimportant enough to attend. Aizawa, have you seen young Midoriya? Shoyuta sighs as he glances at the gaunt blonde man in exasperation. No, I haven't. Turning his back to Yagi, Shoyuta makes his way to the coffee pot to pour himself a cup of his main form of sustenance. Unaware of the tension starting to form in the air, Yagi scratches his chin idly in thought. This is quite unlike him, don't you think? He could have just gotten sick while on break. Shoyuta replies in an effort to dismiss the blonde idiot before taking a sip of his coffee. A perfect opportunity to be training then, heroics stop for nothing. Turning to face the blonde who refuses to let the subject drop, Shoyuta barely keeps from growling. Are you done? Because if you were at the meeting this morning you would know where Midoriya is. So you do know where I can find young Midoriya? Shoyuta glares at Yagi. No, I don't know where Midoriya is. But I do know about him. I found him New Year's Eve bleeding out in a pile of trash after he tried to kill himself. Yagi momentarily chokes on the blood he coughs up, his blue eyes narrowing in suspicion. Then where's my quirk? Did he at least pass it on? That's your biggest concern after I tell you one of our students tried to kill himself? Really, Yagi, and what do you mean where is your quirk? Onyx eyes dart as Shoyuta takes in every movement the other man makes, no matter how small. Rubbing the back of his head sheepishly, Yagi glances around the room, noticing how some of the other teachers have made it into the lounge. I meant young Midoriya's quirk? How is it holding up? How is it holding up? Tell me, how would a quirk hold up with the user being dead? Dead? I thought you said tried to. Yagi turns his face downcast for a moment before he starts to pace back and forth. How could young Midoriya be so irresponsible? Freezing mid-step, he turns his head to glance back at Shoyuta in horror, as he clearly did not mean to say that aloud. Shoyuta turns to face Yagi, coffee cup clattering to the floor as his carefully crafted control snaps. Onyx eyes glow an eerie crimson red as he stares at the retired pro in absolute loathing, dark locks of ebony flare out around his head as his capture weapon starts to rise. Irresponsible? You're calling Midoriya irresponsible? Need I remind you, Tashinori, that it was you who gave a child your quirk which has supervillains after it? You who thought cleaning a beach was enough training for the entrance exam? Who didn't bother to get a previously quirkless child quirk counseling? You who allowed a child try to learn control by himself instead of relying on his other more qualified teachers? Shoyuta snaps his capture weapon out, wrapping it around a stunned Yagi, leaving the other man suspended in the air. I know everything. From how you saved Midoriya from the sludge villain and didn't take him to the hospital and instead crushed his dreams on top of a roof, then proceeded to leave him there, to how he was going to develop 6 more quirks. I know it all, and you know who I think is irresponsible in this whole scenario? You, Yagi Tashinori, and in Midoriya's note from the staff meeting you missed? He says you're the reason he's dead. Shoyuta drops the man unceremoniously on the floor, before turning and walking to his designated spot in the lounge. Pulling out his eye drops and quickly putting them in, not bothering to look back at the bumbling idiot on the floor. Yagi sits on the floor among the spilled coffee and broken cup, hand gripping his chest as he coughs up blood for a moment. He doesn't bother to get up, instead just staring at his reflection in the black coffee. The other teachers in the lounge slowly start moving as they get over the shock they felt at what they just witnessed. What did you mean by give a quirk? That's impossible? Vlad looks at Aizawa, clearly not one for reading social Ks. Is it really though? Nemuri clasps her hands together as she looks from the man on the floor to her friend, then finally to Vlad. We know that there is at least one instance of someone taking quirks for themselves. Is it really that hard to believe there may be a quirk that can be passed down? Hizashi glances over at his husband for just a moment. Midoriya's quirk was called One for All, which was passed down from Yagi himself. According to what we know from Midoriya's journal, the original holder of One for All was All for One's brother. Yagi looks up at the other blonde man, clearly about to protest, but the piercing green eyes that turn to stare at him has him shutting his mouth sharply. Vlad runs a hand down his face in exasperation. If it wasn't for the kid's letter this morning, I would think he could be the traitor with a quirk that has history like that. But he did admit that he'd rather be dead than be a villain. That being said, Vlad looks up at the clock, groaning as he sees the time. Get yourself together, Toshinori. You have heroics with my class today, and we can't let those 1A brats get ahead of them. Shoyuta gives the other heroics homeroom teacher a slight nod in thanks as he watches the two walk out. Turning his attention to the other occupants, he notices that most of the other staff has left. Just his husband, Namuri, and Inui remain. After a moment of deliberation, he turns his attention back to Hisashi, giving the man a small nod of his head before heading to his own class. Pausing only slightly outside of the lounge as he hears his husband invite the two other remaining staff to join them this evening. The rest of the day thankfully goes by without much of a hitch. That is until classes dismiss for the day. To say he wasn't surprised to see the students in front of him would be a lie, at least with one of them. He had fully expected to have the self-proclaimed Deku squad staying after class, but the two in front of him had waved them on without a care in the world. Excuse me, Mr. Aizawa, but Todoroki and I were wondering more about Izuku. We know that you said that his absence was due to personal reasons, and we're concerned. Is he all right? Looking over the two recommendation students, Shoyuta fights the urge to sigh. Because after reading the journal and hearing the letter, of course these two are the ones that his kid helped. All I can tell you right now is that he is safe. If you end up being able to tell us more, will you? Midoriya was the first one to care enough to try and help me. Because of him, I've been able to use my fire side without the negative connotations that doing so used to have. Shoyuta hides the shock he feels looking at Todoroki and seeing past the usual blank face, and instead seeing the blazing determination in the dual user's eyes. Izuku was the one to figure out that I wasn't eating nearly enough for my quirk. He suggested that I try an internship with Fat Gum at some point due to the similarities of our quirks. My quirk works by converting the excess lipids in my body into my creations. Please, Mr. Aizawa, we just want to be able to help him, the same way he helped us. Shoyuta gives a slight nod to the kids. I'll see what I can do. In return, I would like both of you to tell Midnight and Present Mike what you both just told me. Neither of you are in trouble, we just want to make sure that you are getting the support you both need. While that would usually fall to me as your homeroom teacher, I don't want either of you or Midoriya to think that you didn't deserve my full attention. So since I am a bit preoccupied with Midoriya right now, I trust Mike and Midnight to be there for you. Momo shares a look with Todoroki before turning her attention back to Aizawa, a soft smile playing at her lips. Of course we'll go find them now to tell them. And Mr. Aizawa? Thanks for caring. Later that evening has Shoyuta standing with his husband and two colleagues in the hero ward in front of Izuku's room, clearly trying to decide how they want to split up to go in. You can all go in. Nedzu here said that you were all working on his case, correct? I'll let Dr. Aran know that Izuku has visitors. The head nurse flashes them a smile before heading further down the hall. Hearing the voice, the four pro heroes turn to watch as the nurse walks away, leaving only their boss standing in front of them. Shoyuta pauses only briefly before turning back around and entering in his hero code to allow them into the room. Letting everyone else go ahead of him, he stays back for a moment waiting for his boss. What brought you here, Nedzu? I don't know what you mean, Aizawa. I'm just visiting one of our students. You don't make social visits due to there being too many people around. Aizawa stares at the white rat, his gaze beyond exhausted. Nedzu places his paws together in thought before looking up at the dark-haired man. The hospital asked me to come in. They have some new test results in. Shoyuta gives a sharp nod of his head as he offers the chimera a hand up to sit on his shoulder. Keep me informed? Nedzu accepts the offer and gets situated seated on Shuta's shoulder. But of course. This is our student. Shoyuta nods as he walks into the room that has become all too familiar. Namuri quickly walks to the bed, a hand shaking ever so slightly as she reaches out to touch the teen's hand. Green bean. You could have come to us. we would have helped it didn't have to get to this point. Inui watches his colleague for a moment before walking over to the bed and glancing down at the skin on Izuku's upper chest and arms that is exposed. A snarl escaping him as he sees all the scars just in those small areas. What all happened to this kid? Hizashi pulls out the journal from his bag and carefully tosses it to Inui. This is his journal, you can go ahead and read it. Inui catches the book and immediately moves back to the couch in the room, only a bit surprised to see Nem following him. I want to read it too. Might as well get caught up at the same time. It's not long after they settle in to read the journal that the door opens up again, revealing a man dressed in a suit and holding a chart. I apologize for interrupting, my name is Dr. Arion, and I am in charge of Izuku's medical care while he is here. The nurse informed me that he had visitors and I figured you all would rather get this out of the way. He looks from the unknown visitors to the chimera still perched on the dark-haired male's shoulder. Nedzu waves a paw dismissively. You may continue. They are not only part of my staff but they are on the case regarding Izuku as well. Giving a nod of understanding, Dr. Aaron looks down at the chart before he starts to speak. I have the results from his latest tests. The PET scan shows that there is activity going on in his brain, which is good, but the activity is significantly less than his previous scan. The downside to that, however, is that upon doing his fMRI the activity wasn't where we were hoping it to be. What do you mean? Shoyuda crosses his arms as he waits for the response. Does the activity mean the little listener will wake up soon? Hizashi can't help but glance over at the greenette on the bed. Hope blazing in those chartreuse-colored eyes as he turns back to the doctor. Unfortunately, no. That's what we were hoping as well, but the fMRI showed no signs of Izuku regaining consciousness. Dr. Aaron taps his pen against the chart quietly. I'm going to be completely honest with you. The prognosis isn't good. If the next scan shows the same thing, then you are likely looking at him never waking up. I'm sorry. You said likely. What's the probability of him waking up? Or worse? Nemuri turns her attention from the book to the doctor in front of them. Dr. Aaron looks to the only woman in the room and gives her a sad smile. Based on past clinical studies, Izuku has a 27% probability of waking up and a likelihood of 64% of him dying, while only having a 9% chance of staying in his comatose state. Again, I'm very sorry. He bows his head as he leaves the room, making sure to shut the door behind him. Shoyuda stops, his crossed arms falling to his sides, eyes widening ever so slightly. Hizashi frowns seeing the state his husband is in, but he's torn. Looking over at the greenette in the bed, then back to Shoyuda, he smiles sadly as he walks closer to the dark-haired man. Show Panther? What's going on in that pretty head of yours? He telegraphs his movements so to not startle the other man as he wraps his arms around him. I didn't save him, Zashi. I failed to save our kid. Shoyuda ducks his face into his capture weapon as he turns in Hizashi's arms, not wanting the others to see him like this. Our kid, huh? I wasn't aware that we had gained another one. Hizashi can't help but tease as he carefully reaches out to lift Shuda's chin to make his husband face him. No, Sho, don't shut me out. You have always been so strong, taking on the problems of everyone so that they don't lose their light. Hizashi gently strokes Shuda's jawline with the pad of his thumb while smiling softly. But it's okay to let your light dim, I'll be right here to help it glow bright again. Shoyuda leans forward against Hizashi, just resting in the comfort given by the blonde. A muffled, "Thanks, sunshine," reaching the blonde's ears. It takes a few minutes, but Shoyuda finally manages to compose himself, which allows him to turn and face the others in the room. I want to tell my class. That's quite expected. However, I must ask that you hold off for now. Nedza grins, his eyes gaining a certain glint. After all, you do currently have one of his abusers in your class and we don't want him to know that we know just yet. Inui huffs as he sets the journal aside. I agree with Nedzu. I'd much rather see the mindsets of your class before you tell them what's going on. What about just a few specific students? Hizashi shoots finger guns at his husband, showing that he's got his back. Nemuri's eyes widen as if just remembering something. That's right, Yaoyorozu and Todoroki came and visited Hizashi and I after classes were over today. Apparently the green bean helped them become more accepting of themselves while also helping them with their quirks. Even if the green pup helped the other pups, I would still rather be able to meet with them to make sure that they are both in a safe place mentally before letting them know what's going on. Inui crosses his arms, clearly not willing to budge on his stance. I believe that's a great idea. We don't want to risk their mental health. Plus it keeps the number of people who know down to a minimum while I check the UA cameras to make sure there was nothing missed while on our campus. After that we can re-evaluate who knows. Is that agreeable to everyone? Seeing nods all around the room, Nedzu claps his paws together excitedly. Excellent. Inui, please make it a top priority to meet with Todoroki and Yaoyorozu. Hopping down from Shuta's shoulder, Nedzu crosses the room to make it to the door. Now I have to go meet with the doctors to discuss what we want to do from here. Everyone have a good evening. Maybe go watch a movie or something. His grin turns absolutely feral at the mention of a movie, causing Nemuri to shudder. After watching the Chimera leave, she turns to her friends curiously. Why did he say movie like that? Shoyuta barely contains a sigh, his expression darkening at the reminder. We obtained security footage from Izuku's middle school. Nemuri frowns in thought before crossing the room to grab Shuta's hand. Want some company to watch with? Shoyuta shakes his head. Thanks, but no. I have a feeling it's going to be bad. Just have coffee ready in the lounge tomorrow? Of course, Shosho. I'll even guard it with my life. If it does get to bad, Aizawa, you're welcome to hit me up. Inui grabs the journal and holds it up. Mind if I take this with me to read? I'll bring it into work with me tomorrow so Nemuri can catch up. Hizashi nods to Inui. Of course, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for all of this. Inui waves Hizashi off as he makes his way to the door, pausing to look over at the unconscious teen. It's our job. Both of them. Just wish we could have helped him sooner. He can't keep the growl from escaping at that, and instead just turns to the door and walks out. Nemuri gives Shoyuta and Hizashi both a quick hug. Thanks for letting me in on what's really going on. Call if you need anything, alright? She moves over to the bed and kisses Izuku's forehead lightly. Keep fighting, kiddo. I want you to wake up so I can hear your muttering again. You're so smart. Pulling back, she gives a wave to her friends before taking Inui's lead and heading out. Hizashi looks over at his husband, offering an encouraging smile. Ready to go, love? Maybe take Nedzu's advice. Shoyuta casts a sidelong look at the bed, not really wanting to leave the boy right now. Hizashi shakes his head while smiling wide at how predictable his husband can be. How about I go get us something to drink and you? Hizashi takes his bag off of his shoulder and passes it to the other man. Can set up the laptop and get the headphones out. Shoyuta gives a small nod as he takes the bag to get his part of the task ready. Hizashi pauses at the door for just a moment to watch as Shoyuta starts to get things ready. Be right back. Love you. He shoots a finger gun at the dark-haired man, a laugh escaping as he catches the brief eye roll before the door closes on him. Upon his return to the room, Hizashi grins great big as he sees his grumpy husband fidgeting with the laptop. Ready, Sho? Shoyuta looks up from the laptop, giving Hizashi a dry look as he holds out a hand. Coffee. Hizashi snickers as he stands just out of arm reach. Now, grumpy cat, that's not how you ask. Shoyuta clearly debates just sending his capture weapon out to strangle his husband, quickly resigning himself however to the idea that doing so will cause his coffee to spill. Coffee, please. He barely growls out, hands still reaching for the cup. Hizashi full out laughs as he hands the coffee to the dark-haired man. That wasn't so hard now, was it? That done, he takes a seat beside his husband and puts his headphones on so they can watch the video. Shoyuta watches the blonde get ready while sipping his coffee. The moment he is, however, he turns his attention to the screen as he pushes the play button. It was harder than either one of them expected to watch the footage, to listen to the audio that accompanied it. The constant yelling, the jeers, the countless spider lilies, the pops of all too familiar explosions. They thought that was bad. Nothing could have prepared them for what they were currently witnessing. Izuku is pushed to the front of the class by a younger Bakugo. Explosions are heard during the walk, smoke raising up off of his uniform, a bright orange glow catches their attention as Bakugo places his ignited hands on Izuku's shoulders, shoving him down into the seat in front of the room by their teacher. A muzzle wrapped around his head is the only thing that keeps the greenette from making any noise, his eyes clenched shut in pain, the only indicator that he's hurting. The class watch in twisted glee as their teacher straps their quirkless classmate down in the chair before walking over to his desk and grabbing a small tool bag. What is one way of identifying a quirkless person? A male student laughs while answering, they have an extra joint in their pinky toe. The teacher nods, a wide smile on his face. Very good. So, we should fix that, shouldn't we? There's a round of cheers through the classroom, but one voice above the rest, this time a young girl's. That's what heroes do. They help people. The teacher's smile twists to something malicious as he sits in front of Izuku. Exactly, that's what heroes would do. He sets the tool bag to the side, opening it quickly, clearly not wanting to waste any time before he turns to peel off bright red shoes followed by All Might socks and sets them on the other side of the chair the boy is sitting in. Looking back over at the open tool kit, he glances down, taking in the items spread out before him. A torch lighter, a dull rusty knife, bolt cutters, and a pair of fish skinning pliers. Grabbing the dull knife, the teacher turns so his back is to Izuku, taking his left foot into his grasp and tucking it under his arm to keep it from moving while still allowing the class to see everything that is going on. He presses the dull blade to the base of the pinky toe and starts to saw away at the flesh there. From base of the toe to the tip and back down the opposite side till the bone is exposed. Setting that foot down, he grabs the right foot and repeats the process on that pinky toe as well. Not giving Izuku a break, he quickly reaches over, switching the knife out with the fish skinning pliers. Still holding the right foot, he positions the pliers up at the top of the pinky toe, carefully grabbing just a small bit of the flesh there as he begins to peel backwards. Giving sharp tugs of the tool when the skin doesn't want to give, as he literally peels Izuku's toe like an onion. He pauses for just a moment to look up at his class and chooses the kid who glows that sits in the very back. Come up here, you get to repeat the process on his left foot. His statement is met with the kid walking up amid groans of disappointments and other students saying it's not fair because they wanted to do it. It causes the teacher to chuckle as he hands the pliers over to his other student. Just like an onion. Grab the least amount of skin, tissue, and muscle as you can, and just peel it back slowly. The student takes the pliers with a nod of his head, before doing exactly what his teacher said and demonstrated just on the left foot. That being taken care of, the teacher looks back into tool kit, noticing the two remaining tools left, then back over his class, his gaze resting upon the bald student who's able to remove his eyeball, as well as the brunette who has horns upon her head. Both of you come up here. Quickly doing as they are told, the students arrive just as their glowing classmate heads back to his desk. Looking at the boy, the teacher hands him the bolt cutters, then hands the girl the blow torch. I'm going to keep the other toes away from this one, so you just open the bolt cutters up. Place his pinky toe in the mouth and quickly shut them. After you do that, she's going to flip that switch and aim it at where we just removed the toe, that way we seal the wound shut. Understand? Yes, sir. They both answer in unison. The boy moves the bolt cutters close to Izuku's right foot first, opening them so that a blade is on the right side and left side of the pinky toe. As soon as he has them situated the way he wants, he squeezes the handles shut quickly. In doing so, the blades close and precisely cuts off the pinky toe bone at the base. He pulls the bolt cutters away and moves to the other side, doing the same thing to the right foot, removing what's left of the toe. The girl steps up as soon as he moves to the other foot, flipping the switch on the torch. Once she's in position, she makes sure the fire isn't on to high so that she seals just what is necessary. The students go back to their seats once they are finished. The teacher, however, looks over Izuku's feet with a manic smile before slipping the All Might socks back on bloodied feet and roughly shoving them into the bright red shoes. Good job. You're all heroes. You helped Midoriya. He turns to release the boy, only to scoff as he smacks the boy, causing the muzzle to dig into the greenette's face even more. Wake up. You should be thanking your classmates for helping your pathetic but problem child. Hizashi runs over to the trash can, barely making it as he leans over, losing the contents of his stomach. He stays there, head in the trash for a few moments, just dry heaving before straightening himself up, Wiping his mouth with a handkerchief he manages to find in his pocket that he promptly throws away before turning to his husband only to find him not in the same spot anymore. Instead, Shoyuta is leaning over the bed, a hand gripping Izuku's tightly, their foreheads pressed together, but even from where he stands, he can see it. See the light of the room hitting the small crystalline tears quietly streaming down his love's cheeks. He doesn't say anything, and he doesn't approach, just letting them have this moment to themselves as he quietly makes his way back over to the laptop, and to where his drink is, taking a quick drink as he reclaims his seat. Shoyuta leans against Izuku, head to head, trying to hide his tears, his hand gripping his students desperately. It takes a few minutes before he is able to get himself composed enough to speak, and even then, his voice cracks. "You have every reason to give up. You were failed so many times, but kid." Swallowing, he takes the moment to stand back up, eyes still lingering on the figure in the bed. "We can be heroes together." He doesn't bother to hide the tears that fall this time as he just watches Izuku for a few more minutes before walking back over to Hisashi. Sitting beside him, he leans his head against the blonde's shoulder as he starts to get his emotions back under control. Hisashi smiles sadly as he wipes away his husband's tears with the pad of his thumb, his own heart breaking all over again. The removal of Izuku's pinky toes seemed to act as a catalyst for other events, as they start to witness more than just the expected yelling, jeers, and pops of explosions. The other students taking a more hands-on approach to dealing with Izuku. Izuku's eyes widen in surprise and fear as an invisible force lifts him from the ground before throwing him against the wall of the hallway. Groaning in pain, he tries to look around to see where the attack came from, his eyes stopping on a brunette girl from his class. The aforementioned girl stands there pushing her glasses up her nose from where they have slid. "Where's your muzzle, freak?" Izuku hesitates for a moment as he watches his classmate with weary green eyes. "IW's our rear removed us so I see could eat." Keeping Izuku pinned to the wall with her quirk, the brunette sneers in disdain. "Oh, someone let you eat? Don't you know that you're just taking food from someone who needs it more? How selfish can you be? First air, then space, and now food. Sounds an awful lot like Null needs to make a payment for all of our generosity." The girl turns to face the newcomer, a cold, calculating smile playing at her lips as she watches Izuku's head tilt ever so slightly out of the corner of her eye. "What do you both have in mind?" A red-headed boy pulls 2 sharpened strands from the top of his head, leaving 3 remaining. "Oh, just some quirk training." That being said, he walks up to where Izuku is pinned to the wall. He moves efficiently, carefully placing slow, methodical cuts upon Izuku's body. He's careful not to hit anywhere vital or make the cuts too deep, instead sticking to thin slashes cutting through Izuku's uniform and leaving behind cuts of various depths and sizes. Stepping back to admire his work, he taps one of the sharpened locks of hair against his chin in thought. "Look at all the blood dripping from the cuts, but I feel like there's something more that I can do. You could make it where he doesn't ruin any more lives. Be a hero to those in the future." The redhead turns to face the brunette boy that walked up with him. "What do you mean?" Tucking a lock of his shoulder-length brown hair behind his ear, the boy grins sadistically. "A single cut and you become a hero by making it where he can't curse the world with any more useless freaks." Izuku's eyes widen in fear as he realizes what they're discussing. But he still keeps quiet, knowing that if he makes a sound that things are only going to get worse for him. The red-headed boy winces in pain at the implication and turns to look at Izuku for just a moment before shaking his head. "No one will want the useless freak anyway, so I think that'd just be a waste of time." Shrugging, the other boy approaches closer to his friend. "Fair point. But that being said, I don't think you got enough of a payment out of him for what he's taken from all of us. After all, telekinesis over there is right. He has taken up so much of our air and food." Stepping back, the redhead moves closer to the girl with a small wave of dismissal. "Then you take a turn if I didn't do enough." The brunette boy grins as he steps up to where Izuku is pinned and places his hand at his mouth. "That's a lovely idea. Now nerd open wide." Izuku's eyes get impossibly wide with his fear as he quickly debates the merits of disobeying versus just listening. Deciding that disobeying would be worse, Izuku hesitantly opens his mouth for the other boy only to GD and choke as quirked fingers.